My daughter banned me from seeing my grandkids. 2 months later, she was begging for a meeting. "Dad, you're a bad influence on the kids," my daughter Sarah said, her voice cold and final as she gathered up Emma's backpack and Jack's jacket from my entryway. "I think it's best if we limit your time with them, significantly." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I simply watched as my 7-year-old granddaughter looked back at me with confused eyes, her small hand clutching the stuffed elephant we'd won together at the county fair just 3 weeks ago. Jack, 10 years old and already picking up on the tension, stared at his shoes. "Say goodbye to Grandpa," Sarah ordered, not looking at me. Bye, Grandpa," they whispered in unison, and the door closed behind them with a finality that echoed through my suddenly empty house. I stood there for exactly 30 seconds. Then I walked to my study, picked up my phone, and made one call to my financial advisor, Robert Chen, a man I'd known for 23 years. "Robert," I said calmly, "remember that trust fund we set up for Sarah's children, the education fund? I need you to make some changes. Immediately." 8 weeks later, Sarah was standing at that same door, mascara running down her face, her hands trembling as she knocked. But this time the conversation would happen on my terms. And by then she learned exactly what it cost to treat family like a liability. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how we got here. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm 72 years old, and for the last 8 years since my wife Patricia passed, my grandchildren have been the center of my world. Emma and Jack, 7 and 10, the kind of kids who still believed their grandpa hung the moon and could fix anything with duct tape and determination. I'd spent 40 years building Mitchell & Associates, a mid-sized architectural firm in Portland. Not flashy, but successful enough that I'd retired at 64 with a comfortable pension, a paid-off house in Laurelhurst, and enough investments to ensure I'd never be a burden to anyone. Patricia and I had planned it all carefully. The golden years, they called them. Travel, grandchildren, freedom. Then Patricia's cancer took those plans and shredded them in 18 brutal months. But the grandkids, they saved me. Every Wednesday afternoon and every other weekend, Sarah would drop them off and my house would come alive again with the sound of children's laughter, of sneakers thundering up the stairs, of endless questions about how birds fly and why the sky is blue, and "Can we please, please, please make chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast?" I was the grandpa who said yes. Yes to ice cream before dinner. Yes to staying up past bedtime to finish the movie. Yes to building elaborate blanket forts that took over the entire living room. Yes to teaching Jack how to use my old woodworking tools in the garage, even though Sarah had specifically said it was too dangerous. Yes to letting Emma paint my toenails sparkly purple, because she wanted to practice being a beauty expert. Was I spoiling them? Absolutely. That's what grandparents are for. The trust fund had been Patricia's idea, actually. Set it up when Emma was born. She'd said, "Make sure Sarah's children have opportunities we had to fight for. Education, travel, maybe a house down payment someday." We'd been putting money in every month since 2017. By the time I called Robert that Wednesday afternoon, the balance had grown to $127,000, enough to pay for both kids' college tuitions with room to spare. I'd never told Sarah the exact amount, just mentioned that Grandma and I set something aside for the kids' future. She'd smiled and thanked me and then promptly seemed to forget about it, which was fine. It wasn't about gratitude, it was about loving my grandchildren. But let me back up further. Let me tell you about the good times before everything changed. Wednesday, September 14th, 2023, 3 months before. Grandpa, look what I made at school." Emma burst through my front door like a small tornado, waving a construction paper butterfly with pipe cleaner antennae. Behind her, Jack trudged in more slowly, dragging his backpack, already too cool at 10 to show enthusiasm about arts and crafts. Sarah followed, checking her phone. "Hi, Dad. Thanks for taking them. Derek and I have that charity gala tonight." Derek, my son-in-law, Harvard MBA, senior partner at some consulting firm that charged $500 an hour to tell companies what they already knew. A man who wore his success like armor and treated anyone without an Ivy League degree like they were vaguely simple. No problem, I said, kneeling down to Emma's level to admire her butterfly. This is beautiful, sweetheart. Should we put it on the refrigerator? The fridge of fame, Emma squealed, using the name we'd given to my refrigerator door, which was covered in her artwork and Jack's school projects. Sarah barely glanced up from her phone. Don't let them have too much sugar, Dad. Emma's been hyper lately, and we're trying to manage her behavior. Her behavior. Emma was 7. Her behavior consisted of being a normal, energetic child. Sure thing, I said, already planning the ice cream sundaes we'd make after dinner. And Dad? Sarah looked at me directly for the first time. Maybe keep the activities a bit more structured tonight. Derek thinks you're a little too permissive with them. They come home all wound up. There it was. The first crack, though I didn't recognize it then. Derek thinks. Not we think, or I think. Derek. I'll keep that in mind, I said, which meant absolutely nothing, and we both knew it. After Sarah left, I made my famous spaghetti and meatballs, the recipe Patricia had perfected over 30 years. Emma helped me roll the meatballs, her small hands getting covered in meat and breadcrumbs. Jack set the table without being asked, the way I'd taught him. Good manners aren't old-fashioned, I'd told him. They're respect made visible. Over dinner, Emma told me about her best friend Madison, who had a loose tooth. Jack complained about his math teacher who gave too much homework. I listened to every word, asking questions, being present in a way I'd learned from Patricia. Kids don't need fancy toys or expensive trips. They need someone who actually pays attention. After dinner, we did make ice cream sundaes, with extra sprinkles. And we stayed up until 9:30, watching a nature documentary about penguins, because Jack was fascinated, and Emma wanted to know if penguins ever got cold. When Sarah picked them up at 10 crow, the kids were sleepy and happy, faces still sticky with chocolate, despite my best cleaning efforts. Dad, Sarah sighed, seeing Emma's chocolate-smeared cheek. What did I say about sugar? Growing kids need energy, I replied mildly. They're fine. She pressed her lips together in that way that reminded me so much of her mother, but without Patricia's warmth behind it. We'll see you Friday for dinner. Absolutely. I'm making pot roast. Actually, Sarah hesitated. Derek's parents are in town. We're doing dinner with them instead. Oh, I tried to keep the disappointment from my voice. Friday dinners had been our tradition for 3 years. No problem. Another time. Yeah, another time. But another time kept getting postponed. The next Friday was a work event Derek couldn't miss. The Friday after that, Sarah had a headache. The third Friday, they just didn't call. Still, I had my Wednesdays with the kids. That was enough, or so I told myself. October 23rd, 2023. 2 months before. Grandpa, can you help me with my volcano project? Jack stood at my workbench in the garage, holding a science fair assignment sheet. A volcano? Absolutely. When's it due? Next Friday. I looked at the clock. 3:47 p.m. Let's get started. We'll need papier-mâché, paint, baking soda, vinegar. We spent the next 4 hours building the most elaborate volcano Jefferson Elementary School had ever seen. 3 feet tall, painted to look like Mount St. Helens, complete with trees on the slopes and a hidden chamber for the chemical reaction. Emma helped too, painting tiny trees and asking 100 questions about why volcanoes explode and whether there are volcanoes on other planets. When Sarah arrived at 8:15, 15 minutes later than she'd promised, she found all 3 of us in the garage, covered in paint and completely absorbed in adding final details. Dad, Jesus Christ! She stood in the doorway, arms crossed. What is all this? Science fair project, Jack said proudly. It's Mount St. Helens. Want to see it erupt? It's 8:15 on a school night and you've got him doing this. She looked at me accusingly. He has homework, Dad. Real homework. Not craft projects. Science fair is real homework, I said calmly. It's worth 20% of his grade. Fine, but you should have checked with me first before encouraging him to build some elaborate thing. Derek and I could have hired a tutor to help him with something more appropriate. A tutor? for a 5th-grade science project. I think he's doing just fine, I said. Sarah's jaw tightened. Kids, get in the car. Now. As they gathered their things, I heard Emma whisper to her brother, I don't want to go. Grandpa's house is more fun. Sarah heard it too. Her expression went cold. That night I got a text at 11:30 p.m. Sarah, we need to talk about boundaries, Dad. The kids are getting too attached to your house and not respecting their own home. Derek and I think we need to reassess the current arrangement. I stared at that message for a long time. Too attached. To their grandfather. To love and attention and homemade spaghetti and science projects. I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. Not yet. Lucian's November 17th, 2023. 1 month before. Robert, you're being ridiculous. Derek's voice carried from the dining room where I'd just served my pot roast. Sarah had finally agreed to Friday dinner, but with Derek's parents in tow. Charles and Miriam Thornton, old money from Boston, the kind of people who used summer as a verb. I'm simply saying that public school might not be the best environment for children with Jack and Emma's potential, Miriam said, cutting her meat into precise, tiny pieces. The Cunningham Academy has an excellent program. Very selective, of course. Very expensive, you mean? I said mildly. Jefferson Elementary is a fine school. Jack's thriving there. Charles chuckled. Thriving is relative, Robert. At Cunningham, he'd be challenged. Prepared for the rigors of higher education. He's 10. Exactly the age to start thinking about his trajectory, Derek interjected. My parents have generously offered to cover half the tuition. We'd cover the rest. I glanced at Sarah, who was staring at her plate. And what does Sarah think? I think, she started, then caught Derek's eye. I think it's worth considering. After dinner, while everyone else moved to the living room, I helped Emma with her homework at the kitchen table. Simple addition and subtraction. She was struggling with borrowing and multi-digit subtraction. Okay, sweetheart, I said patiently. Remember what we practiced? When the top number is smaller than the bottom number, we borrow from the next column. I don't get it, she said, tears forming in her eyes. Mrs. Patterson explained it different, and Mom says I need to learn it her way or I'll get confused. Everyone learns differently. There's no one right way. Derek says there is. Her voice got very small. He says Grandpa's way is old-fashioned and not as good as the new math. New math. As if addition had changed in the last 50 years. I helped her finish her homework using whatever method made sense to her. When she finally understood it, her face lit up with that pure joy of getting something that had seemed impossible. I love you, Grandpa, she said, hugging me tight. I love you too, sweetheart. Later, as they were leaving, I overheard Miriam talking to Sarah in the hallway. He's lovely, dear, in his way, but you do need to be careful about how much influence he has. Children pick up habits, speech patterns. You want them exposed to the right kind of people. The right kind of people. I'd built a successful business, raised a daughter, been married to an incredible woman for 42 years. But I wasn't the right kind of people, because I didn't summer in the Hamptons or say trajectory when talking about a 10-year-old's education. Sarah didn't defend me. She just murmured something I couldn't hear. That's when I should have known. But hope is a stubborn thing, especially when it comes to family. December 13th, 2023. The breaking point. Dad, we need to talk. Sarah stood in my living room, but she didn't sit down. Bad sign. Behind her, through my front window, I could see Derek, waiting in their Mercedes SUV, engine running. Of course, I said. What's going on? I've been thinking a lot about the kids and their development. Derek and I both have. There it was again. Derek and I. Never just I anymore. And? We think you're too permissive with them. Too indulgent. Emma came home last week singing some song about a cat that you taught her, and it had questionable language. I thought back. Oh, the old folk song. The cat came back. That's a classic children's song, Sarah. My father taught it to me. It's about violence toward animals. It's about a cat who keeps surviving. It's whimsical. She held up her hand. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You don't see the problem because you don't want to see it. The sugar, the late bedtimes, the way you undermine our parenting decisions. I've never undermined you. You taught Jack to use power tools, under supervision, teaching him skills, responsibility. He's 10, Dad! Her voice rose. 10-year-olds don't need to know how to use a bandsaw. They need structure, discipline, appropriate educational enrichment. I sat down slowly, feeling my age for the first time in this conversation. Sarah, what's this really about? She looked away. Derek's parents have concerns about the environment we're exposing the children to. Environment. You live in a different world than we do, Dad. A different social sphere. And that's fine for you, but Jack and Emma need to be prepared for the life they're going to have, not the one you had. The words landed like physical blows. The life I had, the one where I built something from nothing, where Patricia and I raised a daughter with love and attention, where success meant family dinners and helping with homework and being present. What are you saying, Sarah? She finally looked at me directly. I'm saying we need to limit your time with the kids, maybe once a month instead of every week, and supervised visits only. Derek thinks, I interrupted, my voice harder than I intended. Derek thinks. What about what you think, Sarah? What about what your children want? Did you ask them? They're children. They don't know what's best for them. And I do? No, Dad, you don't. You're a bad influence on them. There it was. The words that would change everything. I stood up, my hands remarkably steady. I see. Dad. No, I understand perfectly. Your husband's family has decided I'm not suitable company for my own grandchildren. That's not. Please leave, Sarah. Dad, don't make this harder than. I said leave. She left. And as the door closed behind her, I did something I hadn't done since Patricia's funeral. I cried, but the tears lasted exactly 10 minutes. Then I wiped my face, walked to my study, and opened my laptop. By the time the sun set, I'd made 7 calls, scheduled 3 meetings, and begun a chain of events that would teach my daughter a lesson about valuing family. She thought I was a bad influence. She had no idea. I sat in my study until well past midnight, the glow of my computer screen, the only light in the house. Patricia's photo on the desk, watched me with that gentle smile she'd always had when I was working through a problem. She'd been the emotional one in our marriage, quick to tears and laughter both. I was the planner, the strategist, the one who thought 3 moves ahead. I know what you'd say. I told her picture quietly. You'd say I should forgive and move on. That family is everything. But Patricia hadn't heard her daughter call her husband a bad influence. She hadn't lived to see Sarah transform from the bright, independent woman we'd raised into someone who said, Derek thinks instead of I think. I opened my contacts and stared at the first name on my list. Call 1, Robert Chen, financial advisor, 6:47 p.m. Robert, it's Rob Mitchell. Rob, good to hear from you. How are the grandkids? The question stabbed deeper than he could have known. That's actually why I'm calling. I need to make changes to the education trust we set up for Emma and Jack. A pause. What kind of changes? I want to know my options for restructuring it, or dissolving it entirely. Robert Chen's voice shifted into professional concern mode. That's a significant decision. Can I ask what's prompted this? My daughter has decided I'm no longer a suitable influence on my grandchildren. I'm being cut off from seeing them. Jesus, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry, just tell me what I can do. Legally, ethically. That money was meant to ensure my grandchildren had opportunities. If I'm not going to be part of their lives, I need to reconsider the whole arrangement. I could hear him typing. The trust is revocable, so you have full control. Current balance is $127,438.22. You could dissolve it, transfer the funds elsewhere, or restructure the terms of distribution. What if I wanted to make it conditional? Conditional on what? On their parents' behavior. On whether I maintain a relationship with the children. More typing. That's legally complex. We'd need to bring in a trust attorney. But yes, it's possible to add conditions. The question is whether you really want to do this, Rob. Using money as leverage in a family dispute. This isn't leverage, Robert. This is consequences. I've spent 8 years putting money into that fund, believing I'd be part of their lives. If that's no longer true, The foundation of the trust has changed. I understand. Look, let me set you up with Margaret Torres. She's the best trust and estate attorney in Portland. She can walk you through your options without you making any rash decisions. Nothing rash about it, but yes, set up the meeting. I will. Rob, for what it's worth. Sarah's making a mistake. We agree on that much. Call 2. Margaret Torres, estate attorney. 7:15 p.m. Margaret Torres answered her cell phone on the third ring, which told me Robert had already sent her a heads-up text. Mr. Mitchell, Robert Chen just messaged me. I have an opening tomorrow at 2 p.m. if you'd like to discuss your trust situation. Tomorrow works, but I need to know something first. Hypothetically, if someone has been providing substantial financial support to family members, and those family members then cut off contact, what recourse does that person have? Are we talking about the trust fund or additional financial support? I hesitated. Additional. Can you be more specific? I walked to my filing cabinet and pulled out a folder I'd labeled Sarah, Financial Help. Inside were receipts, canceled checks, bank transfers. 5 years' worth of assistance I'd never tallied up because it was just what you did for family. I've been helping my daughter and son-in-law financially for about 5 years. Down payment assistance when they bought their house, $40,000. Monthly payments when Derek's consulting business had a slow period. That was about $2,000 a month for 8 months. Car repairs, emergency dental work for my granddaughter, property tax help 1 year. I'd need to add it all up. And these were gifts or loans. I called them loans at the time, but we never formalized anything. No promissory notes, no repayment schedule. Do you have any written communication where they acknowledged these as loans? I thought back to text messages, emails. Maybe. I'd have to look. Do that. Bring everything to tomorrow's meeting. If you can establish these were loans rather than gifts, you may have legal options. But, Mr. Mitchell, speaking not as an attorney but as someone who's seen a lot of family disputes, are you sure you want to go down this road? Ms. Torres, my daughter, told me I'm a bad influence on my grandchildren because I taught them to make spaghetti and helped with science projects. Her husband's family thinks I'm not the right kind of people for their social sphere. I've spent 8 years and over $150,000 supporting a family that just told me I'm not welcome anymore. Then yes, I'd say you have standing for a conversation. See you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Call 3. James Mitchell, my brother. 7:52 p.m. Jimmy, it's Rob. Little brother, haven't heard from you in a month. How's retirement treating you? James lived in Seattle, ran a successful restaurant supply company, and had been my sounding board since we were kids building tree forts in our backyard. He was 3 years older and infinitely wiser about people. Nay, not great actually. Sarah's cut me off from the Grandkids. The jovial tone evaporated. What? Why? I gave him the abbreviated version. With each sentence, I could hear his anger building. That pretentious son of a bitch! James finally exploded. Derek's family thinks you're not good enough. You built a firm that employed 60 people at its peak. You've probably forgotten more about business than that MBA asshole will ever know. It's not about business. It's about class. About me being embarrassing. Because you actually work for a living instead of pushing money around in a consulting firm. Jesus, Rob, what are you going to do? I'm restructuring the trust fund, meeting with an estate attorney tomorrow, looking into whether the money I've given them over the years can be classified as loans. Silence. Then, you're going to war. I'm protecting myself. No, you're going to war. And you know what? Good. Patricia would have handled this with tears and forgiveness. But Patty's not here anymore. Someone needs to teach these people that you don't throw away family because they're not fancy enough for your country club friends. I'm 72, Jimmy. Too old for war. Bullshit. You're a Mitchell. We don't get old. We get strategic. What else do you need? Actually, do you still have that private investigator friend? The one who helped you with that employee theft situation? Marcus Webb. Yeah. Why? I want to know exactly what Derek and Sarah's financial situation is. Real estate holdings, business income, debts, everything. If I'm going to make moves, I need complete information. I'll text you his number. Rob, one more thing. Yeah? Don't let them guilt you out of this. You've been a good father and a great grandfather. If they can't see that, fuck 'em. Call 4. Marcus Webb, private investigator. 8:23 p.m. Mr. Webb, my name is Robert Mitchell. James Mitchell gave me your number. Any friend of Jimmy's? What can I do for you? I need a complete financial workup on my son-in-law and daughter. Asset searches, income verification, debt analysis. Anything public record, and anything that's not public record but you can access legally. Can I ask why? They've been accepting financial help from me for 5 years while living well beyond their means. Now they're cutting me out of my grandchildren's lives. I need to understand what I'm dealing with. Understood. I'll need full names, addresses, places of employment, and social security numbers if you have them. I rattled off the information. Some of it I knew by heart. Sarah was my daughter after all. The rest I found in old tax documents where I'd helped them claim deductions. This'll take about a week for a comprehensive report. My rate is $150 an hour plus expenses. Do it. And Mr. Webb, I want to know everything. Credit card debt, business financials, country club memberships, private school tuition. If they're spending money, I want to know where it's coming from. You got it. Call 5. Dr. Helen Cartwright, family therapist. 8:54 p.m. I'd almost skipped this call. Almost convinced myself I didn't need a therapist's perspective. But Patricia's voice in my head reminded me that being strategic didn't mean being reckless. Dr. Cartwright's office. This is the answering service. I need to make an appointment with Dr. Cartwright. It's regarding a family crisis. Dr. Cartwright has an opening Thursday at 10 a.m. Can I get your name and contact information? After I provided it, the operator asked, "Is this a mental health emergency?" No, but it's urgent. Can you briefly describe the nature of the crisis? My daughter has cut me off from my grandchildren, and I'm about to make some significant financial decisions that will affect the whole family. I want to make sure I'm thinking clearly and not acting out of anger. I'll mark this as priority. Doctor. Cartwright will call you tomorrow to confirm the appointment and do a brief screening. Call 6. Timothy Brennan, former law partner. 9:17 p.m. Tim had been Patricia's attorney when she'd set up her will. Now he was semi-retired, taking only select cases, but we'd remained friendly over the years. Rob Mitchell, haven't heard from you since the memorial service. How are you holding up? Been better, Tim. I need your legal opinion on something. Shoot. If I've been providing substantial financial support to my daughter over several years, and I have some documentation showing these were intended as loans, do I have grounds to demand repayment? How substantial? Probably north of $120,000 when I add it all up. A low whistle. That's not trivial. Do you have promissory notes? No, but I have texts where she said, "I'll pay you back," and emails where we discussed repayment timelines that never materialized. That could work. Oregon law doesn't require written contracts for loans, but you'd need to prove intent. Those communications would help. What's prompting this? She's cut off my access to my grandchildren. Told me I'm a bad influence. Christ, Rob. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Help me understand my options. Well, you could send a formal demand letter requesting repayment. That starts the clock on collections. If she doesn't pay, you could file a civil suit. But Rob, this is your daughter. Are you really willing to sue her? Tim, she looked me in the eye and told me I'm not suitable to be around my own grandchildren. At this point, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to show her that treating people like disposable ATMs has consequences. Then let me draft a demand letter. Not to send yet, just to have ready. Sometimes having the legal paperwork prepared helps people think more clearly about whether they really want to go nuclear. Draft it. I'll decide when to send it. Call 7. Emma's cell phone. 10:03 p.m. This was the call I'd been avoiding. Sarah had given Emma a phone for emergencies 6 months ago. I'd programmed my number into it under Grandpa. I didn't expect her to answer. It was past her bedtime, and Sarah probably had the phone on a charger downstairs. But on the 4th ring, hello, a small, sleepy voice. Emma, sweetheart, it's Grandpa. Grandpa! Sudden alertness, then whispered urgency. I'm not supposed to talk to you. Mommy said you're in timeout. Timeout, like I was a misbehaving child. I know, sweetheart. I just wanted to hear your voice. Are you okay? I miss you. Her voice cracked. Jack misses you too. He cried after Mom said we couldn't see you anymore. He said you were going to help him make a birdhouse for his project. My throat tightened. I miss you both so much. Emma, I need you to know something, okay? This isn't your fault and it's not Jack's fault. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't make sense. Mom says you were teaching us bad things. What do you think? Did I teach you bad things? A pause. You taught me how to make pancakes and how to tell which birds are which, and that it's okay to try hard things even if you fail the first time. Those don't sound like bad things to me. They don't sound bad to me either. A longer pause, then. Are you still going to love us even if we can't see you? That's when my heart broke completely. Emma Rose Mitchell, I will love you and your brother every single day for the rest of my life. Nothing will ever change that. You understand? I understand. Then even quieter. I have to go. I think I heard Mom coming. I love you, sweetheart. Love you too, Grand. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone for 10 minutes, staring at Patricia's photo. 7 calls. 7 moves toward a future where I stood up for myself instead of being walked on. 7 steps toward war. But that last call, that was the one that sealed it. They could take my dignity, they could take my money, but they couldn't take my love for those children, and they couldn't treat me like I was disposable without consequences. Tomorrow, the real work began. Thursday, December 14th, morning. I woke at 5:30 a.m., earlier than usual. Couldn't sleep. My mind kept running through scenarios, calculations, possibilities. I made coffee and opened my laptop, starting the task I'd been avoiding for 5 years, adding up every dollar I'd given Sarah and Derek. The spreadsheet grew quickly, too quickly. Down payment assistance, June 2018, $40,000 car repairs, Emma's accident, August 2018, $3,200 short-term loan, when Derek's business had cash flow issues, September-April 2019, $16,000 emergency dental work for Emma, November 2019, $4,500 property. Tax assistance, March 2020, $8,100 kitchen renovation loan, summer 2020, $12,000 COVID business support, 2020-2021, $18,000 various temporary help deposits, 2019-2023, $31,200 plus dozens of smaller amounts, $500 here for unexpected bills, $1,000 there for opportunities they couldn't pass up, $750 for Emma's dance lessons, $2,000 for Jack's summer camp. By 7:30 a.m., I had the total, $138,760, nearly $140,000. More than Patricia's entire life insurance payout, more than I'd spent on myself in the last decade combined. And in all those transactions, only 3 times had Sarah used the word loan. The rest were, could you help us out, or we're a little short this month, or Derek's favorite. Just until the next commission check clears. I saved the spreadsheet and titled it, Family Support Documentation. Sarah and Derek Thornton, 2018-2023. At 9:45 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Mitchell, this is Dr. Helen Cartwright, returning your call from last night. Dr. Cartwright, thank you for calling back. The service indicated you're dealing with a family crisis involving your grandchildren. Can you tell me more? I gave her the summary. With each sentence, I tried to keep my voice level, professional, but by the time I got to Emma's phone call, my composure was cracking. I see, she said when I finished. And you've already started taking concrete actions, restructuring finances, consulting attorneys, hiring an investigator. Yes. Can I ask what you hope to accomplish? The question stopped me. What did I hope to accomplish? I want my daughter to understand that there are consequences for treating people, treating me, as disposable. I want her to see that you can't take someone's money for 5 years, let them be part of your children's lives, and then cut them off the moment they're no longer socially convenient. And if she doesn't see that, if she doubles down instead, Then at least I'll have protected myself financially from further exploitation. Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to be direct with you. Everything you're describing sounds like you're preparing for battle.
Legal moves, financial restructuring, private investigators. That's not grief management, that's warfare. Maybe it is. Are you prepared for what happens when your daughter discovers what you're doing? Because these actions will come to light.
Sarah will find out about the trust fund changes. She'll receive that demand letter. This will escalate. Good. Let it escalate. For 8 years, I've been the nice guy, the pushover, the bank that never says no. Where has that gotten me? It's gotten you cut off from your grandchildren, and what you're about to do may make that temporary situation permanent. Have you considered that? The question hit harder than it should have. Of course, I'd considered it. I'd thought of nothing else since Sarah walked out of my house. Yes, I said quietly. I've considered it. And you're willing to take that risk. Dr. Cartwright, they've already made it permanent. Sarah told me I'm a bad influence. Derek's parents think I'm not the right kind of people. This isn't a misunderstanding that's going to blow over. This is my daughter choosing her husband's family over her own father. Then my professional recommendation is this. Come see me before you send any legal documents or make any irrevocable financial changes.
Let's talk through what you're feeling and make sure you're acting from a place of clarity, not just pain. Thursday at 10 on, you said. Yes, I'll see you then. After we hung up, I sat with her question.
Was I willing to risk making this permanent? The answer, I realized, was that it already was permanent. Sarah had made that choice. I was just deciding whether to go down quietly or make some noise on my way out. I chose noise. At 1:45 p.m., I walked into Margaret Torres's office building, carrying a briefcase full of evidence and a heart full of resolve. Time to find out exactly what consequences looked like. Margaret Torres's office occupied the corner suite on the 14th floor of the Pacific Tower building, with views stretching across downtown Portland to Mount Hood in the distance. The furniture was expensive, but not showy. Dark wood, leather chairs, everything speaking of competence and discretion. She was younger than I expected, maybe 50, with sharp eyes and the kind of handshake that meant business. Mr. Mitchell, please sit. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. Can I get you coffee? Water? Water would be fine. She poured from a glass pitcher, then settled into her own chair with a legal pad. So,
Robert Chen tells me you're reconsidering the education trust you established for your grandchildren.
And, from our phone conversation, I understand there are other financial entanglements with your daughter and son-in-law. That's correct. I opened my briefcase and pulled out the folder. I've documented everything I could find going back 5 years. I slid the spreadsheet across the desk. She put on reading glasses and studied it in silence for nearly 3 minutes. Her expression didn't change, but I saw her eyebrows rise slightly when she got to the total at the bottom. 138,760, she said quietly. That's substantial support. It doesn't include the trust fund. That's another 127,738. So we're looking at over $250,000 total. Yes. She set down the spreadsheet and picked up a stack of printouts beneath it. Text messages, emails, bank transfers. She read through them methodically while I sipped my water and studied the Mount Hood painting on her wall. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to be honest with you. Some of this is recoverable. Some of it isn't. And all of it is going to be messy. Explain. She tapped the spreadsheet. The down payment assistance. That's a gift unless you have something in writing calling it a loan.
The Christmas presents, the dinner payments, the small amounts under $1,000, also gifts.
The IRS would view them that way, and so would a court. And the rest. The larger amounts where you have communications mentioning repayment, where there was discussion of terms even if informal. Those have potential. She pulled out several email printouts. This one from March 2020, where your daughter writes, "Dad, we'll pay you back as soon as Derek's commission check clears." That's evidence of loan intent. This text from June 2019. Just a short-term loan until we get through this rough patch. Also useful. How useful? Useful enough to send a formal demand letter. Useful enough that if they refuse to pay, you'd have grounds for a civil suit. She leaned back in her chair. But Mr. Mitchell, winning a lawsuit against your own daughter isn't really winning. You understand that. I understand, but I also understand that she needs to face consequences for her actions. Margaret studied me for a long moment. May I ask you something personal? Go ahead. If Sarah came to you tomorrow, apologized, said it was all a terrible mistake and you could see your grandchildren again, would you forgive the debt? The question sat between us like a live grenade. I don't know, I admitted. A week ago, I would have said yes instantly. Now, I shook my head. She called me a bad influence. Her husband's family thinks I'm not good enough to breathe the same air as their grandchildren. I've spent 8 years and $250,000 supporting people who fundamentally don't respect me. That's answer enough. She made notes on her legal pad. Okay, here's what I recommend.
We prepare a demand letter, itemizing every loan with supporting documentation. We give them 30 days to respond. If they don't pay or negotiate in good faith, we file suit. What about the trust fund? The trust fund is entirely within your control since it's revocable. You can dissolve it, restructure it, change the beneficiaries, anything you want. The question is what you want to accomplish. I'd been thinking about this since my call with Robert Chen. I want to make it conditional. They get the money if and only if I maintain a meaningful relationship with my grandchildren.
Meaningful, defined as weekly visits, holidays, birthday parties, school events, all the things I had before Sarah decided I wasn't worthy. Margaret nodded slowly. That's doable, but complicated. We'd need to establish clear metrics, define what constitutes compliance, build in dispute resolution. And, Mr. Mitchell, you should know this kind of conditional trust can breed resentment. You'd essentially be using your grandchildren's college fund as leverage. Sarah's already using them as leverage. She's holding them hostage to force me to accept my exile quietly. At least this way there's a path forward where everyone wins if she makes the right choice. Fair enough. More notes. I'll draft the trust amendment and the demand letter. Both should be ready by early next week.
In the meantime, I want you to gather every piece of financial documentation you have.
Bank statements showing transfers, canceled checks, credit card receipts if they used your cards, everything. I will. She set down her pen and looked at me directly. One more thing. Are you prepared for this to destroy your relationship with your daughter permanently? It's already destroyed.
I'm just deciding whether to go down with dignity or on my knees. Then we'll make sure it's with dignity. I left Margaret's office at 4:15 p.m., feeling lighter than I had in days. There was something clarifying about putting legal wheels in motion. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was taking action. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Marcus Webb. Mr. Mitchell, Marcus Webb here. I've got some preliminary findings on Derek Thornton's financials. You sitting down? I'm in my car. What did you find? Your son-in-law is drowning. Not waving. Drowning. His consulting business took a major hit during COVID and never recovered. He's got 3 active credit cards with a combined balance of $87,000. The Mercedes SUV, leased at $1,200 a month. Their house has a second mortgage, I'm betting you didn't know about. They pulled $75,000 in equity 2 years ago. My hand tightened on the steering wheel. A second mortgage? Yeah. Looks like they used it to cover business expenses and lifestyle costs. Combined first and second mortgage payment is around $4,800 a month. Jesus. It gets better. Derek's business, Thornton Strategic Consulting LLC, shows gross revenues of $280,000 last year. Sounds good, right? Except his expenses were $240,000. He netted $40,000.
That's less than a teacher makes. How are they living? That's the million-dollar question. Or in this case, the $138,000 question. Your money, Mr. Mitchell. You've been subsidizing their entire lifestyle. I sat in the parking garage, engine off, trying to process this. What about Sarah's income? She's part-time at a nonprofit, project coordinator.
She makes $48,000 a year. I did the math in my head. Derek nets $40,000. Sarah makes $48,000. That's $88,000 combined annual income before taxes. Their mortgage alone was nearly $60,000 a year. How is this even possible? It's not without external funding. Your external funding. And here's the kicker. They just enrolled both kids at the Cunningham Academy. That's $32,000 a year per child. $64,000 total. The private school, the one Derek's parents had been pushing at that dinner,
the one they'd said they'd cover half the tuition for. So they're spending $124,000 a year on mortgage and school alone, on a combined income of $88,000. Before taxes, Marcus emphasized. After taxes, they're probably taking home $65,000. They're underwater by at least $60,000 annually. And that's not counting the Mercedes lease, food, utilities, insurance, entertainment, country club dues. Country club. Riverside Country Club. Derek's parents are members. Got Derek and Sarah a junior membership. That's another $8,000 a year. I leaned my head back against the seat, staring at the concrete ceiling of the parking garage. Every number Marcus recited was another nail in the coffin of my illusions. My daughter and her husband had been living a complete fantasy life, funded almost entirely by my generosity and their mounting debt. Is there more? Oh, there's more! Derek's parents, Charles and Miriam Thornton. They're not as wealthy as they pretend. Charles took early retirement from his banking position 5 years ago. Not voluntarily. He was asked to leave after some questionable loan decisions. Nothing criminal, but enough that the bank wanted him gone quietly. They pushed for early retirement? Exactly. His pension is decent but not spectacular. About $75,000 a year. Miriam never worked. They've got their house in Boston, paid off, worth maybe $600,000. But that's about it. The summering in the Hamptons your daughter mentioned. They rent a cottage for 2 weeks every August and act like they own the place. So they're pretending to be wealthier than they are. Welcome to the club. Derek learned from the best. His parents taught him to live like old money, even when you don't have it. And he taught your daughter the same trick. I thought about all the times Sarah had mentioned Derek's family connections, their social standing, the opportunities that came from being part of their circle. All of it was smoke and mirrors, funded by a 72-year-old man who'd spent 40 years building something real. How long until their house of cards collapses? Based on their current debt-to-income ratio and spending patterns. 6 months, maybe 8, unless they find another source of funding. A pause. Or you start sending money again. That's not happening. Then they're in serious trouble. The second mortgage alone is underwater. They owe more than the house is worth in the current market. If they had to sell, they'd walk away with nothing. Marcus, send me everything you found. Full report. All the documentation. Will do. Should have it to you by tomorrow afternoon. Mr. Mitchell, one more thing. Yes, your daughter's been looking at bankruptcy attorneys. Did a Google search from her work computer 3 weeks ago. I've got a contact who does IT work for her nonprofit. 3 weeks ago, before she cut me off from the Grandkids, before she told me I was a bad influence. She knew, I said quietly. She knew they were in financial trouble, and she cut me off anyway. Looks that way. Maybe she figured you'd bail them out again if they asked. Cutting you off might have been a preemptive move. Create distance before asking for more money, so you feel guilty and desperate to reconnect. The cynicism of it took my breath away, but it made a horrible kind of sense. Sarah knew I'd do anything to see my grandchildren. What better leverage than to cut off access? Let me marinate in the loss for a few weeks, then present me with an olive branch. Contingent, of course, on helping them out of their latest financial crisis. Thank you, Marcus. Send me that report. You got it. And Mr. Mitchell, for what it's worth, you're doing the right thing. I drove home on autopilot, my mind churning through revelations. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd made a decision. Inside, I opened my laptop and drafted an email to Margaret Torres. Margaret, based on new information from the private investigator, I need to accelerate our timeline. My daughter and son-in-law are in severe financial distress, nearly $200,000 in debt, spending $60,000 plus more annually than they earn. There's evidence Sarah may have cut me off from the grandchildren as a manipulation tactic, planning to use access as leverage for another bailout. Please have the demand letter and trust amendment ready by Monday. I want both delivered before they can ask me for more money. Robert Mitchell. I hit send, then opened a new document. Time to write something I should have written years ago. Friday, December 15th, 9:30 Owens Doctor. Helen Cartwright's office was in a converted Victorian house in the Alphabet District. All hardwood floors and soft lighting that was probably meant to be calming. I'd arrived 15 minutes early and spent the time in the waiting room, staring at a painting of a forest path that was either symbolic or just happened to be on sale at the art fair. Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Cartwright, appeared in the doorway. Mid-50s, kind eyes, the sort of person who looked like she actually listened instead of just waiting for her turn to talk. Her office was smaller than Margaret Torres's, more personal. Photos of what I assumed were her own grandchildren on the bookshelf, a box of tissues prominently displayed on the side table. She caught me looking at them. "A lot of people need those," she said gently, settling into a chair across from me. No desk between us, I noticed. "But you don't strike me as someone who cries easily. Not since my wife died. Patricia, tell me about her." For the next 10 minutes, I talked about Patricia, how we'd met at a community college architecture class in 1953, how she'd been the artist and I'd been the engineer, and together we'd built something neither of us could have created alone. How she'd died slowly enough that we'd had time to say everything that needed saying, but fast enough that she didn't suffer too long. "She would hate what I'm about to do," I admitted. "Tell me what you're about to do." I laid it all out. The demand letter, the trust fund restructuring, the financial investigation, the plan to force Sarah to choose between her pride and her children's education. Dr. Cartwright listened without interrupting, making occasional notes. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You're a strategic thinker," she said finally. "A planner. That's how you built your business, how you've approached this crisis. Very methodical. Is that a criticism? It's an observation."
Strategic thinking is valuable, but Mr. Mitchell's strategy can also be a way to avoid feeling things.
If you're busy planning your next move, you don't have to sit with the grief of losing access to your grandchildren. The observation stung because it was true. "I've been sitting with that grief for 3 days, I said. "It hasn't helped. 3 days isn't very long. It's long enough to know that crying about it won't change anything. Action might. Action toward what goal? Reconciliation, revenge, justice. All three." She smiled slightly. "Those goals aren't always compatible. Revenge and reconciliation especially. Maybe not, but at least revenge is something I can control." Dr. Cartwright leaned forward. "Can I tell you what I'm hearing?"
I'm hearing a man who's been hurt deeply by someone he loves, who's channeling that hurt into action because action feels better than helplessness. I'm also hearing someone who's about to blow up his family relationships permanently, possibly taking his grandchildren's college fund with them in service of teaching his daughter a lesson she may never learn. So you think I should just accept
it? Let them treat me however they want. I think you should separate your emotions from your actions. Right now they're tangled together. You're hurt, so you're preparing legal action. You're angry, so you're restructuring the trust fund. You feel disrespected, so you're hiring investigators. But Mr. Mitchell, will any of that get you what you actually want? Which is, to see your grandchildren, to have a relationship with them, to not lose the last 8 years of love and connection you've built. I looked away, toward her window that showed the street below, an old man walking his dog, normal life continuing while mine fell apart. "What would you have me do instead?" I asked quietly. "I'd have you ask yourself this question. In 5 years, when Emma is 12 and Jack is 15, what relationship do you want with them?"
Because every action you take now is building toward that future. If you sue their mother, if you destroy their college fund as leverage, if you publicly humiliate their father, that's what they'll remember.
Not that their mother was wrong to cut you off, that Grandpa went to war with their family. And if I do nothing, if I just accept my exile quietly, then you model something else. Dignity, boundaries without cruelty.
The possibility of reconciliation when people are ready. She paused. You can protect yourself financially without declaring total war. You can stop enabling their lifestyle without destroying their future. I sat with that for a moment.
The demand letter and trust fund changes. You think those are too much? I think they're tools. The question is what you're trying to build with them. A path back to relationship, or a monument to your pain. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, the old man with the dog had disappeared around the corner. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "That's all I'm asking. Think before you act. And, Mr. Mitchell, come back next week. This isn't a one-session problem. I left Dr. Cartwright's office, more unsettled than when I'd arrived. She'd poked holes in my carefully constructed plans, made me question motivations I'd thought were clear. Was I seeking justice or revenge? Were they even different things? My phone rang as I reached my car. Margaret Torres. Robert, I got your email. The documents are nearly ready, but I want to make sure you understand what happens when we send that demand letter. I understand.
They'll be angry. They'll be, more than angry. You'll be starting a legal process that's very hard to stop once it begins. Sarah could countersue, claiming undue influence or elder abuse.
Derek could file for bankruptcy, which would complicate recovery. And the kids, they'll know that Grandpa is suing their parents. I'm aware of the risks. Are you? Because once we send this letter, there's no taking it back.
The relationship damage is immediate and potentially permanent. I thought about Dr. Cartwright's question. What relationship did I want in 5 years? Margaret, hold off on sending the documents.
Have them ready, but don't send them yet. What changed? I need to think about what I'm actually trying to accomplish. I'll call you Monday. After I hung up, I sat in my car and pulled out my phone, scrolled through photos of Emma and Jack. Last Halloween, when they'd dressed as astronauts and I'd made them a cardboard spaceship out of a refrigerator box. Last summer at the lake, teaching Jack to skip stones. Emma's 7th birthday party in my backyard, her face covered in chocolate frosting from the cake we'd made together. 3 days ago, I'd had all of this. Now I had photos and memories and a legal case waiting to be filed. Doctor, Cartwright's voice echoed in my head. What relationship do you want in 5 years? I wanted one where they knew I loved them more than my pride, where they understood that boundaries didn't mean abandonment, where Sarah learned that respect was earned, not demanded, but where the door to reconciliation stayed open. Could I have all of that? Or was I being naive again, the same way I'd been naive about Sarah's motivations and Derek's character? My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Mr. Mitchell, this is Charles Thornton. We need to talk. Today. It's urgent. I'll be at Stumptown Coffee on Division at 3:01 p.m. Please come. I stared at the message. Derek's father. The man who thought I wasn't good enough for his family's social circle. Wanting to meet, urgently. This wasn't a coincidence. Something had happened. I checked the time. 11:47 a.m. 3 hours until the meeting. I texted back, I'll be there. Then I called Marcus Webb. Marcus, something's happening. Derek's father just asked for an urgent meeting. Can you dig deeper into the Thornton family finances? I want to know if there's been any recent crisis. On it. I'll call you back within the hour. I drove home, changed into better clothes, my good suit, the one that said I took this meeting seriously, and waited for Marcus's call. It came at 1:15 p.m. Rob, you sitting down. Tell me. Charles Thornton filed for bankruptcy yesterday. Chapter 13. He's got $340,000 in debts, mostly from reverse mortgaging his house to cover Derek's business losses over the last 3 years. The pieces fell into place like dominoes. Derek's parents hadn't been helping with the Cunningham Academy tuition. They'd been using my money that Sarah had been funneling to Derek, who'd been using it to pay back his father, who'd been covering Derek's business failures. They've been running a pyramid scheme, I said quietly. Using my money to paper over the cracks in their entire family's finances. That's exactly what it looks like. And now Charles's bankruptcy means Derek can't tap that source anymore. Which means they're desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. I looked at the clock. 1:18 p.m. Less than 2 hours until the meeting, where Charles Thornton would probably ask me to save his entire family from financial ruin. The irony was almost funny. The man who thought I wasn't good enough to share Christmas dinner with his grandchildren now needed me to rescue him from bankruptcy. I thought about Dr. Cartwright's question one more time. What relationship did I want in 5 years? Then I thought about something else. What did I owe people who'd treated me like garbage? The answer, I realized, was exactly nothing. I finished getting dressed, put Marcus Webb's full report in my briefcase next to Margaret Torres's draft documents, and headed out the door. Time to hear what Charles Thornton thought was urgent. Stumptown Coffee on Division was busy for a Friday afternoon, filled with laptop workers and groups of friends catching up over espresso. I arrived at 2:55 p.m. and spotted Charles Thornton immediately. He sat at a corner table, staring into a cup of coffee he probably hadn't touched, looking older than he had at that November dinner. The confident banker's posture had collapsed into something that looked like defeat. He saw me and stood, extending his hand. I shook it because Patricia had raised me with manners, but I didn't smile. "Robert, thank you for coming." "Charles." I sat across from him, setting my briefcase beside my chair. "You said it was urgent." He glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers, then leaned forward. "I'll get straight to the point. I need your help. Derek needs your help. Our entire family is facing a financial crisis that could destroy everything we've built. I'm aware of your bankruptcy filing. It was public record as of yesterday morning." His face went pale. How did you know about that?" "I make it my business to know things that affect my family, or what used to be my family, before your daughter-in-law decided I wasn't suitable company." Charles winced. "That situation with Christmas. Robert, you have to understand. Miriam has very specific ideas about family gatherings. She didn't mean any disrespect. She called me low-class. She said my wife knew her place better than I knew mine. Those are her words, Charles, not my interpretation. She shouldn't have said that." He rubbed his face. "Look, we can address the Christmas issue later. Right now there's a more pressing problem. Derek's business is failing, has been for 2 years. I've been covering his losses with home equity loans, and now I'm tapped out. The bankruptcy filing was involuntary. Creditors forced it after I missed 3 payments on the reverse mortgage. I said nothing, just watched him squirm. If Derek's business goes under, he and Sarah will lose everything. The house, the kids' school, their entire life. And it's not just them. Miriam and I are at risk of losing our home in Boston. We've got nowhere else to turn." "Why are you telling me this?" His eyes met mine, and I saw genuine desperation there.
"Because you're the only person with the resources and the connection to this family who might be willing to help. We need $200,000, maybe more."
"To restructure Derek's business debt, catch up on my reverse mortgage, keep Sarah and Derek afloat until things stabilize." The audacity took my breath away. "Let me make sure I understand. You need $200,000 from the man your family just excluded from Christmas dinner because he's not educated enough, not sophisticated enough, not the right kind of people. I know how it sounds. Do you really? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you've spent years looking down on me while simultaneously treating me like an ATM machine. And now that your pyramid scheme is collapsing, you want me to be the foundation that holds it all up." "It's not a pyramid scheme," Charles protested weakly. I opened my briefcase and pulled out Marcus Webb's report. 30 pages of financial documentation. I slid it across the table. "That's a complete analysis of your family's finances. Derek's business netted $40,000 last year on revenues of $280,000. He's drowning in debt. You've reverse mortgaged your home to cover his losses. Sarah's been funneling money from me to Derek, who's been paying you back, who's been using it to keep up appearances while you all pretend to be wealthier than you are." Charles's hands trembled as he looked at the report. "Where did you get this?" "I hired an investigator. The moment Sarah cut me off from my grandchildren, I started protecting myself. And do you know what I found? That my daughter searched for bankruptcy attorneys 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks, Charles, which means she knew you were in trouble. She knew Derek was failing, and she cut me off anyway. It's more complicated than—" "Was it a strategy?" I interrupted, my voice low and controlled. "Cut off the old man from his grandchildren, let him stew in grief for a few weeks, then present him with an olive branch contingent on another bailout. Let me guess. Sarah was supposed to call me right around Christmas, crying about how much the kids missed me, suggesting maybe we could work something out." Charles's silence was answer enough. I leaned back in my chair, a cold fury settling over me. "How long have you been planning this? How long have you all been playing me? Robert, it's not like that. Sarah loves you, the kids adore you, but we're desperate. Derek's business is his entire identity, If it fails, I don't know what he'll do. That's not my problem. But the children, Emma and Jack, they're innocent in all this. If Sarah and Derek lose the house, if they have to pull the kids out of Cunningham, uproot their entire lives. Stop! I held up my hand. Don't you dare use my grandchildren as leverage. You people are the ones who put them in this situation. You're the ones who chose to live beyond your means, to enroll them in a $64,000-a-year school you can't afford, to buy cars and join country clubs and pretend to be something you're not. We were trying to give them opportunities. With my money.
You are giving them opportunities with money you extracted from me under false pretenses. How much of the $138,000 I gave Sarah over the last 5 years went to Derek's business? How much went to paying you back?
How much actually went to my grandchildren's benefit? Charles looked away. I don't know the exact guess. Maybe 30%. To the kids directly. 30%. $41,400 to Emma and Jack. Nearly $100,000 to prop up Derek's failing business and Charles's mortgaged lifestyle. I pulled out another document from my briefcase. This is a demand letter from my attorney. It itemizes every loan I made to Sarah and Derek over the last 5 years with supporting documentation showing these were loans, not gifts. I was going to send it Monday, but I think I'll give you a preview instead. I slid it across the table. Charles read it, his face going from pale to ashen. You're suing your own daughter. I'm demanding repayment of loans she promised to repay and never did. If she chooses not to pay, then yes, I'll sue. She doesn't have $138,000. I know, which means she'll have to sell the house to pay me back, or declare bankruptcy like her father-in-law just did. You can't do this. You'll destroy her. Derek, the kids. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to something I barely recognized. Charles, your family destroyed my relationship with my grandchildren first. You told me I wasn't good enough to share Christmas dinner. Your wife insulted my dead wife. Your son treats me like an embarrassment. And my daughter, my own daughter, called me a bad influence because I taught Emma to make pancakes and helped Jack build a volcano. We made mistakes. You made choices. Calculated choices. And now you're facing the consequences. I stood up, gathering my documents. I'm not giving you $200,000. I'm not giving you $200. I'm done being the bank that funds your delusions of grandeur. Wait! Charles grabbed my arm, then immediately released it when I looked down at his hand. Please, just hear me out. What if we could guarantee your access to the grandchildren?
Weekly visits, holidays, everything you want. We could put it in writing. You mean the access I had before you decided I was too low class for your family. You're offering to give me back what you stole in exchange for $200,000.
That's not a deal, Charles. That's extortion. It's a compromise. You get to see Emma and Jack. We get the financial help we need. Everyone wins. I studied his face. He actually believed this was reasonable. In his world, relationships were transactions, and $200,000 was a fair price for access to my own grandchildren. No, I said simply. Robert, please, I have another document you should see. I pulled out the final paper from my briefcase.
This is an amendment to the education trust I set up for Emma and Jack. It makes the trust conditional on my maintaining a meaningful relationship with.
If I don't see them regularly, if I'm excluded from their lives, the money goes to charity instead. Charles stared at the document like it was a snake. You'd take away their college fund, your own grandchildren's future. Their parents took away my relationship with them. This is proportional response. They can have the money or they can have their pride. They can't have both. This is blackmail. No, this is boundaries. For 8 years I've been funding your family's lifestyle with no strings attached. Now there are strings. Follow them or don't. That's your choice. I put the document back in my briefcase and stood. Charles remained seated, looking like I'd gut-punched him. You're making a terrible mistake, he said quietly. Family is everything. Money comes and goes, but family. Don't lecture me about family. You people have spent years making me feel less than, while simultaneously draining my bank account. You don't get to teach me about family values. I turned to leave. then stopped. One more question needed answering. Charles, that first Thanksgiving when Derek brought Sarah home to meet you, 8 years ago, did you know then that I'd be useful? Did you know I had money? His silence was damning. Derek did his research. Charles finally admitted. He knew your firm was successful. He knew Patricia had just passed and you'd received life insurance. He knew Sarah was your only child, which meant you'd be generous. The room seemed to tilt slightly. He targeted her. Derek targeted my daughter specifically because she came with access to my money. That's not. He loves Sarah. He does. But he also recognized that she came from a family with resources, yes. 8 years. 8 years of what I'd thought was family, built on a foundation of calculated manipulation. Derek hadn't fallen in love with Sarah. He'd seen an opportunity and taken it. Does Sarah know? Know what? That her husband picked her because of my bank account. Charles looked away. I don't. That's not a conversation I've ever had with her. But you've had it with Derek. His silence confirmed it. I walked toward the door, my legs somehow still working despite the trembling in my hands. Behind me, I heard Charles call out once more. Robert, think about what you're doing. You'll regret this. I didn't turn around. I just kept walking, out into the December cold, toward my car, where I sat for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel and breathing slowly through my nose. 8 years. The entire marriage built on a lie. Sarah's whole adult life with a man who'd chosen her like you'd choose an investment opportunity. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Sarah, Dad, I heard you met with Charles. We need to talk. Can you come over tonight? Please, it's important. I stared at the message. There it was, the olive branch, right on schedule. Charles had probably texted Derek the moment I left, and Sarah had been deployed to smooth things over and set up the ask for money. I texted back, I'm not giving you money. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, Sarah. This isn't about money. It's about the kids. Please, Dad. 7 p.m. Not about money. Everything with this family was about money. They just dressed it up in other clothes. But she'd said it was about the kids. And despite everything, despite the manipulation, the lies, the calculated cruelty, I still loved Emma and Jack more than my pride. Fine, 7 p.m., but Derek can't be there. Sarah. Deal. I sat in my car for another few minutes, then called Margaret Torres. Margaret, the documents are going out Monday.
No more delays. What happened? I just learned that my son-in-law targeted my daughter 8 years ago, specifically because I had money, that my daughter's entire marriage was built on financial exploitation,
and that her in-laws have been running a pyramid scheme with my money for years. Jesus. Have the demand letter and trust amendment ready for service Monday morning. And Margaret, make them as legally bulletproof as you can, because this is going to get ugly. Already done. Robert, be careful tonight. If they're desperate enough to manipulate your relationship with your grandchildren, they're desperate enough for anything. I thanked her and hung up, then called James. Jimmy, I need you to do something for me. Tonight at 7 p.m., I'm meeting with Sarah at her house. If you don't hear from me by 9 p.m., call the police for a wellness check. What? Rob, what's going on? I'm about to walk into a room full of desperate people who've been using me for 8 years. I want someone to know where I am. I'm driving down from Seattle. I'll be there by 6. You don't have to. Shut up. I'm your brother. You think I'm letting you walk into this alone? Quamite p.m. Sarah's house. The house looked the same as it had 2 weeks ago. Same Christmas lights, same wreath on the door, same Mercedes SUV in the driveway that was being leased at $200 a month they couldn't afford. James sat in his car across the street, engine running. I'd convinced him not to come in, but he'd insisted on being nearby. If I don't see you walk out by 8:30, I'm coming in, he'd said, and I don't care who's there. I knocked. Sarah answered immediately, like she'd been waiting by the door. Dad, come in. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, yoga pants and an old college sweatshirt. The Instagram perfect persona had cracked completely. Where's Derek? At his office, working late. It's just me. And Mom. She gestured toward the living room where Catherine Thornton sat on the couch, looking smaller and older than I remembered. My jaw tightened. You said Derek wouldn't be here. You didn't mention Catherine. Please, Dad. We need to talk. As a family. I almost laughed. As a family. That's interesting phrasing from the people who excluded me from family Christmas. Catherine stood, wringing her hands. Robert, I owe you an apology. What I said about Maria, about your place in this family, it was unconscionable. I was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry. The apology landed flat, rehearsed. She'd been coached, probably by Charles after our coffee meeting. You're sorry because you need my money, I said, not because you actually respect me. That's not true, Sarah interjected. Mom realizes she made a mistake. We all do. The Christmas dinner situation got out of hand, but we're here to make it right. I set my briefcase down by the door and walked into the living room, sat in the same chair where Michael had once told me I wasn't welcome. Full circle. Okay, I'm listening. Make it right. Sarah exchanged a glance with Catherine, then sat across from me. Charles told you about the financial situation. He told me you're drowning in debt, that your marriage is built on lies, and that you were planning to manipulate my grief over losing access to my grandchildren to extract more money from me. Did I miss anything? Sarah flinched. It's not, Dad. It's more complicated than that. Then uncomplicate it. She took a deep breath. Yes, we're in financial trouble. Yes, we've made mistakes with spending and business decisions. But we're willing to change. We're going to downsize, pull the kids out of Cunningham, get our spending under control. We just need a bridge loan to get us there. $200,000 to catch up on debts and give us breathing room to restructure. And in exchange, full access to the kids, every Wednesday, every other weekend, holidays, everything. Like it was before. Like it was before you told me I was a bad influence. I never should have said that. Tears formed in her eyes, real or manufactured. I couldn't tell anymore. I was under so much stress. And Derek's parents were pushing so hard about Christmas, and I made a terrible mistake. But I love you, Dad. The kids love you. We want you in our lives. For $200,000. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I leaned forward. Sarah, do you know why Derek married you? Her face went blank. What? Charles told me today. Derek researched your background before he even asked you out. He knew I owned a successful firm. He knew Patricia had just died and left me with life insurance money. He knew you were my only child. He targeted you specifically because you came with access to capital. That's not true. But her voice wavered. Ask Charles. Ask Derek. Hell, ask yourself, did Derek ever show interest in you financially before he showed interest in you romantically? Did he ask questions about my business, my assets, my retirement planning in those first few dates? Sarah's face had gone white. You're lying. You're trying to turn me against my husband. I'm telling you what your father-in-law told me 2 hours ago. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. I recorded the whole conversation. Would you like to hear it? I hadn't actually recorded it. Oregon's two-party consent laws prohibited that. But the bluff worked. Sarah's face crumpled. Oh, God. Catherine moved to sit beside her, putting an arm around her shoulders. Darling, don't listen to him. He's trying to manipulate you. Derek loves you. Whatever research he might have done initially, he loves you now. Does he? I asked quietly. Does a man who loves you enroll your children in a school that costs $64,000 a year when your combined income is $88,000? Does a man who loves you put you on the hook for a $4,800 monthly mortgage when you can barely afford groceries? Does a man who loves you let his wife beg her father for money to cover his business failures? Derek's business will recover, Catherine insisted. He just needs time and capital. This is a temporary setback. It's been failing for 2 years. That's not temporary. That's terminal. Sarah was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. What am I supposed to do, Dad? Divorce him? Blow up my children's lives? We're in this together now, for better or worse. You're supposed to stop enabling him. Stop letting him bleed my resources dry while treating me like garbage. Stop using your children as leverage to manipulate me into funding your fantasy life. We're not manipulating. Then explain the timeline. I stood up, pacing now. 3 weeks ago, you searched for bankruptcy attorneys.
2 weeks ago, you decided I was suddenly a bad influence. 1 week ago, I got cut off from my grandchildren. Today, Charles asks me for $200,000. Tonight, you want to make things right. That's not coincidence, Sarah.
That's strategy. She buried her face in her hands. Catherine's arm tightened around her, and when Catherine looked at me, her expression had shifted from apologetic to hostile. You're a cruel man, she said coldly, making your daughter cry, questioning her marriage, throwing money in her face when she's asking for help. Is this who you are, Robert? Is this the example you want to set for Emma and Jack? The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I'm cruel for refusing to fund your family's delusions, for setting boundaries after years of being used. You're turning your back on family in their hour of need. You turned your back on me first. You just didn't expect it to have consequences. Sarah looked up, mascara running down her cheeks. So that's it. You won't help us. You'll just watch us lose everything. I'll watch you face the natural consequences of your choices. That's not cruelty, Sarah. That's reality. And the kids, you'll let them suffer. The kids have a trust fund with $127,000 in it. But after today, that money is conditional on you maintaining my relationship with them. You want their college paid for. Stop cutting me out of their lives. Sarah's expression hardened. You're blackmailing us with our children's education. No, I'm setting terms. You had 8 years of unconditional support. How'd that work out? You got entitled and cruel. So now there are conditions. Call it what you want. Catherine stood up, her voice rising. You'll regret this, Robert. When Sarah and Derek lose everything, when those children have to change schools and lose their friends and see their parents' marriage crumble under financial stress, that will be on you. You could have prevented it. No, I said firmly. Their choices created this situation. I didn't force Derek to run his business into the ground. I didn't force Sarah to live beyond her means. I didn't force any of you to treat me like an ATM while looking down on me for not being educated enough for your social circle. I walked to the door and picked up my briefcase.
Monday morning, you'll receive a demand letter for repayment of $138,000 in loans documented with evidence. You'll also receive notice that the education trust is now conditional on my access to Emma and Jack.
You have 30 days to decide how you want to respond. Dad, please. Sarah's voice broke. I love you, Sarah. I'll always love you. But I'm done being used.
When you're ready to have a real relationship based on mutual respect, instead of financial exploitation, call me. Until then, talk to your attorney. I opened the door.
Behind me, I heard Catherine's voice, sharp and venomous. This isn't over, Robert. We'll fight that trust amendment. We'll contest the loans. We'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. I turned back one last time.
Make sure when you tell people, you mention that I gave you $250,000 over 8 years while you called me low class and excluded me from Christmas dinner.
I'm curious how that story plays out in your social circle. I closed the door on Catherine's outraged response and walked to my car where James was waiting, engine still running. How'd it go? He asked as I climbed into the passenger seat. Badly. Drive. I'll fill you in. As we pulled away from the house, I looked back one last time. Through the window, I could see Sarah collapsed on the couch, Catherine pacing angrily, both of them probably already planning their next move. The war had officially begun, and I'd just fired the first real shot. Saturday, December 16th, morning. I woke at 5:43 a.m., having slept maybe 3 hours total. Every time I'd closed my eyes, I saw Sarah's face, collapsing as I told her about Derek's calculated courtship, heard Catherine's venomous voice promising to fight back, felt the weight of Emma's small voice on the phone. Are you still going to love us? James had stayed over, taking the guest room that used to be Sarah's when she was growing up. I found him already awake in my kitchen making coffee. Couldn't sleep either, he asked. Not really. He poured 2 mugs, handed me one. You know they're not going to take this lying down. I know. Sarah's going to call, probably multiple times. Derek will try to negotiate. Catherine will make threats. Are you ready for that? I sipped the coffee, hot and bitter. No, but I'm doing it anyway. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Sarah, time-stamped 5:17 a.m. Sarah, Dad, I couldn't sleep. I need you to understand something. Derek loves me. Maybe he did research in the beginning, but that's just being smart. You did background checks on contractors before hiring them, right? That doesn't mean the relationships weren't real. Please reconsider the legal action for the kids' sake, if not mine. The rationalization was impressive, comparing marriage to hiring contractors, reducing love to due diligence. I didn't respond. At 6:32 a.m., another text. Sarah, I talked to Derek this morning. He wants to meet with you. Man to man. Clear the air. Will you at least give him that chance? Man to man. Like Derek had any right to my time after 8 years of lies. I texted back. No. All communication goes through attorneys after Monday. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, Sarah, you're really going to do this? Sue your own daughter? Destroy your grandchildren's future? This is who you are. I set the phone down without responding. She's going to keep trying, James observed. Pushing buttons, looking for the angle that makes you cave. Let her try. But James was right. Over the next 4 hours, my phone became a constant buzzing nightmare. 7:15 a.m. Sarah, the kids are asking about you. Emma cried at breakfast. She doesn't understand why Grandpa doesn't love her anymore. 8:03 a.m. Derek, Robert, this is Derek. I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding. I'd like to explain my side of things. Can we meet? I'm available today. 8:47 a.m. Sarah, Mom says you recorded your conversation with Dad. That's illegal in Oregon. You could face criminal charges. 9:23 a.m. Unknown. Number Mr. Mitchell, this is Miriam Thornton. I'm appalled by your treatment of our family. Charles came home in tears yesterday. He tried to help you understand our situation, and you responded with cruelty and legal threats. Whatever you think you're accomplishing, you're only hurting innocent children. 10:05 a.m. Sarah, Jack's teacher called. He got in a fight at school yesterday. He's acting out because his home life is unstable, because you're creating instability. Is this what you want? Each message was calibrated to hit a different pressure point. Guilt about the kids, fear of legal exposure, appeals to family loyalty, implications that I was mentally unstable, classic manipulation tactics. I'd seen Derek use them in business negotiations. He'd learned from the best, Charles, who'd spent 40 years in banking talking people into bad loans by making them feel stupid for hesitating. I forwarded all the messages to Margaret Torres with a note. Document everything. They're building a narrative. She responded within minutes. Good instinct. This is exactly what desperate people do. Throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Don't respond to any of them. Let them keep texting. Every message helps our case. Sunday, December 17th. The social media attack. I learned about the Facebook post from my neighbor, Claire Martinez, who knocked on my door at 9:30 a.m., holding her phone. Robert, I don't know how to tell you this, but Sarah posted something on Facebook. It's bad. She showed me her screen. Sarah's post had gone up an hour ago and already had 73 comments and 45 shares. Sarah, Thornton, my heart is breaking today. My father has decided to sue me and withhold my children's education fund because I set a boundary about holiday gatherings. I've tried everything to reconcile, but he's more interested in revenge than family. I'm sharing this because I need support right now and because I want people to understand what financial abuse looks like, even when it comes from family. My kids are crying, asking why Grandpa hates them. How do I explain that sometimes people value money more than love? The post was accompanied by a photo of Emma and Jack from Thanksgiving, looking adorable and innocent. Comments flooded in. Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Some people get bitter as they age. Weaponizing a college fund? That's disgraceful. Those poor babies. Family should be unconditional. Money shouldn't come with strings attached. Your father sounds toxic. Sometimes you have to cut off family for your own mental health. A few people pushed back. There's probably more to this story. Sarah's dad has always been generous. Setting boundaries goes both ways, though. You can't exclude someone from family, then expect their money. But those comments were quickly drowned out by Sarah's friends and Derek's business network, rallying around her, painting me as a vindictive old man using money to control his daughter. I handed Claire's phone back. Thank you for showing me. Robert, what actually happened? Because I've known you for 15 years and this doesn't sound like you. I gave her the abbreviated version. With each sentence, her expression shifted from concerned to outraged. She cut you off from the grandkids first, then wants your money. Claire shook her head. That's not financial abuse, that's consequences. You want me to comment on her post. Set the record straight? No, don't engage. It'll just make things worse. But not everyone had my restraint. By noon, a war had broken out in Sarah's comment section. My friends and business associates had started weighing in. Sarah, you excluded your father from Christmas dinner because your in-laws thought he wasn't sophisticated enough. Don't act like he's the villain here. Rita, from my old firm, your father paid for your entire lifestyle for 5 years. Maybe show some gratitude instead of playing victim on social media. Tom Chen, Robert Chen's brother. I heard Derek's business is failing and you needed another bailout. Funny how you reconcile when you need money. Someone I didn't recognize. Sarah responded to each critical comment with variations of the same theme. You don't know the full story. My father has been emotionally manipulative for years. This isn't about money, it's about control. By evening, the post had 200+ comments and had been shared 89 times. I was being discussed in living rooms across Portland, reduced to a caricature. The cruel old man who valued money over family. James found me sitting in my study, staring at my computer screen showing the Facebook thread. Don't read that garbage, he said. It's all lies and manipulation. People believe it, though. People believe what they want to believe. Sarah's telling a story that confirms their biases about older generations being bitter and controlling. You tell them the truth, that she excluded you first, that she's been using your money for years, and it's too complicated. It requires them to see Sarah as something other than a victim. I'm being destroyed in the court of public opinion. So what? You know the truth. The people who matter know the truth. Everyone else. He shrugged. Let them think what they want. In 6 months, they'll have moved on to the next scandal. But that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd made a terrible mistake. Not in setting boundaries. That was necessary. But in thinking I could control how this story got told. Sarah had already won the narrative. I was the bad guy, and no amount of legal documentation would change what people believed. Monday, December 18th, the documents arrive. Margaret Torres called at 9:47 a.m. The demand letter and trust amendment were served an hour ago. Derek signed for both. You should expect a response today. What kind of response? Could be anything. Angry call, attorney letter, nothing at all. Just don't engage directly. Anything they say to you can be used in court if this goes that far. The response came at 11:23 a.m. Not from Sarah or Derek, but from an attorney I'd never heard of. From Kevin Bradshaw, Escorts, Bradshaw and Associates, to Robert Mitchell. Demand for cease and desist. Mr. Mitchell, I represent Sarah and Derek Thornton in response to your demand letter dated December 18, 2023. Your claims regarding alleged loans are without merit and appear to constitute financial elder abuse in reverse, a pattern of your attempting to control your adult daughter through monetary manipulation. The funds you provided over the years were gifts, freely given without expectation of repayment. Your attempt to reclassify them as loans years later, coinciding with your daughter setting healthy boundaries with you, demonstrates a clear pattern of retaliation.
Furthermore, your threat to withhold educational funds from minor children as punishment for their mother's boundaries constitutes child abuse under Oregon law.
We are prepared to file for a restraining order if you continue this pattern of harassment. Cease all contact with the Thornton family immediately.
Any further legal action will be met with counterclaims for intentional infliction of emotional distress, elder financial abuse, and harassment. Kevin Bradshaw, attorney at law, forwarded the email to Margaret Torres. She called back immediately.
This is bullshit posturing. Elder abuse in reverse, that's not even a legal concept. He's throwing spaghetti at the wall. But it sounds convincing. To lay people, maybe. To a judge, this letter actually helps our case. He's threatening restraining orders and abuse claims without any factual basis. That's sanctionable behavior. What do? Nothing. We wait for their 30-day response period to expire.
If they don't pay or propose a reasonable payment plan, we file suit. Meanwhile, I'll draft a response to this nonsense letter that puts their attorney on notice. After I hung up, I sat with the email for a long time. Elder financial abuse.
Harassment, child abuse. The words stung because they were designed to sting. Kevin Bradshaw, or more likely Derek feeding him talking points, knew exactly which buttons to push. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello, Grandpa. Emma's voice, small and scared. My heart stopped. Emma, sweetheart. Hi. Mommy said I could call you. She's listening on speakerphone. Of course she was. This wasn't Emma calling. This was Sarah, using Emma as a weapon. How are you, sweetheart? I'm okay. A pause. Then a rush of words that sounded coached. Mommy said you're mad at her, and that's why we can't see you. She said you want her to pay you money we don't have. Is that true? I closed my eyes. It's more complicated than that, Emma. But, do you love us? Jack said maybe you don't love us anymore because we did something wrong. Emma Rose Mitchell, listen to me very carefully. I love you and your brother more than anything in the world. You didn't do anything wrong. Not one thing. Do you understand? Then why? Her voice cracked. Why can't I see you? I could hear Sarah in the background, her voice muffled, but unmistakably there, coaching Emma on what to say next. Sweetheart, your mom and I have some grown-up things we need to work out, but my love for you never changes. Not ever. Mommy says, Emma stopped. Then, Mommy says if you really loved us, you wouldn't make her cry all the time. You wouldn't try to take away my school. There it was. The poison, delivered through a 7-year-old's innocent voice. Emma, I would never take away your school. That's not what's happening. But Mommy said, Emma, I interrupted gently. Who taught you to make chocolate chip pancakes? A confused pause. You did. And who helped you build that butterfly for your science project? You did. Do those sound like things someone would do if they didn't love you? No. Very quietly. I have to go now, sweetheart. But I need you to remember something, okay? Grown-ups sometimes have disagreements. That doesn't mean I stopped loving you. It just means I'm standing up for myself. Can you remember that? I'll try. Good girl. I love you. Love you too, Gran. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, shaking with fury. Using Emma like that, weaponizing a 7-year-old's confusion and fear, putting words in her mouth to manipulate me. It was beyond low. It was cruel. My phone buzzed immediately with a text from Sarah. Sarah, see what you're doing to her. She cried for 20 minutes after you hung up. This is on you, Dad. You can stop this any time. I called Margaret Torres again. They just had Emma call me. Coached her to ask about the money. To tell me I'm making Sarah cry and taking away her school. Margaret's voice went cold. Document it. Write down everything Emma said. Everything you said. The time of the call. If this goes to court, that kind of parental alienation doesn't play well. Is it even legal, using a child like that? It's not illegal, but it's certainly unethical.
And if they're dumb enough to do it repeatedly, we can make it part of our case that they're manipulating the children to maintain access to your money. After documenting the call, I walked to my living room window and looked out at the December
afternoon. Across the street, Claire Martinez was putting up Christmas lights. Warfare, public smearing, legal threats, weaponized children. Every tactic designed to make me feel like the villain. My phone buzzed again. This time a Facebook message from someone named Jennifer Paulson, who I didn't recognize. Mr. Mitchell, I'm a mother of one of Jack's classmates. I just wanted you to know that your grandson came to school today with bruises on his arm. When the teacher asked about it, he said his dad grabbed him during an argument about you. I thought you should know. Sarah made a post about you being abusive, but from what Jack said, it sounds like Derek is the one with anger issues. I stared at the message, ice flooding my veins. Derek had grabbed Jack, hard enough to leave bruises. I screenshot the message and immediately forwarded it to Margaret Torres, and then, after a moment's hesitation, I called Child Protective Services. Oregon Department of Human Services. How can I help you? I need to report suspected child abuse. Tuesday, December 19th. Escalation. The CPS call had consequences I didn't anticipate. By Tuesday morning, Sarah knew about the report. CPS must have contacted her for an initial investigation. Her response was immediate and nuclear. She filed for a restraining order. Margaret called at 8:15 a.m. Rob, we have a problem. Sarah filed an emergency restraining order, claiming you've been harassing her, threatening her family, and making false reports to CPS. There's a hearing scheduled for Thursday at 2:00 p.m. False reports? Derek left bruises on Jack. I believe you, but Sarah's claiming you're making things up to punish her, and the timing, right after you called CPS, makes it look retaliatory. It wasn't retaliatory. A parent contacted me with concerns. I know, but optics matter. Can you forward me that Facebook message? I did, along with the screenshot. Okay, Margaret said. This helps. An independent third-party reporting concerns. We'll present this at the hearing. But Rob, you need to prepare yourself. If the judge grants even a temporary restraining order, you won't be able to contact Sarah, visit her house, or potentially even see the grandchildren until this is resolved. She's using the legal system to punish me for protecting Jack. That's exactly what she's doing. And it might work, at least temporarily. I spent Tuesday in a fog, preparing documentation for the restraining order hearing. Bank statements, emails, text messages, the Facebook message from Jennifer Paulson about Jack's bruises. Everything that proved I wasn't a harassing abuser, but a grandfather trying to protect his family while setting reasonable boundaries. James drove down from Seattle again that afternoon. You look like hell, he said when I opened the door. I feel worse than I look. He came in carrying grocery bags. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't coffee? I don't remember. He made me dinner while I sat at my kitchen table organizing documents. Over pasta neither of us really wanted. I told him about the restraining order, the CPS call, the weaponized phone call from Emma. They're trying to isolate you, James observed. Get you cut off from the kids legally, make you look like a dangerous harasser, paint you as mentally unstable. Classic Darvo. What? Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. It's what abusers do when confronted. They deny their behavior, attack the person who called them out, and flip the script so they're the victim. Sarah learned from the best. She's married to a man who's been gaslighting her for 8 years. That doesn't make what she's doing okay. No, it doesn't, but it helps explain it. She's in survival mode, Rob. Her marriage is built on lies, her finances are collapsing, her father-in-law is bankrupt, and you just took away her safety net. She's lashing out in every direction, at the expense of her children, at the expense of everyone, including herself. This Facebook post, the legal threats, using Emma to manipulate you, none of that makes her look good. She's burning bridges she might need later. I pushed pasta around my plate. What if the judge grants the restraining order? Then, you comply completely, document everything, and wait for the truth to come out. Meanwhile, you've got Margaret, you've got documentation, and you've got me. You're not alone in this. But sitting there in my quiet house, looking at Christmas decorations I hadn't bothered to put up, I'd never felt more alone in my life. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Mitchell, this is Rita Chen, Robert's wife. I just wanted you to know that we believe you. Robert told me what's really happening, and we think you're doing the right thing. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. Love, Rita. Then another, from Tom Williams, who used to work at my firm. Boss, heard about the Facebook nonsense. Anyone who knows you knows that's bullshit. Stand strong. And another, from my old neighbor in Laurelhurst. Robert, Claire told us what's going on. We're Team Grandpa all the way. Let us know if you need anything. By evening, I'd received 17 supportive messages. People who'd known me for years, who'd seen me with Emma and Jack, who knew the kind of man I was. Sarah had won the public narrative with strangers on Facebook, but I'd won something more valuable: the support of people who actually knew the truth. I texted back each person thanking them. Then I opened my laptop and wrote something I should have written days ago. An open letter to my daughter, Sarah. I know you won't read this. I know you've convinced yourself that I'm the villain in this story, but I'm writing it anyway because someday, maybe years from now, you might be ready to hear it. I love you. I have always loved you. Every dollar I gave you over the last 8 years came from love, not obligation. Every time you called needing help, I showed up because that's what family does. But love without respect is not sustainable. And you stopped respecting me the moment Derek's parents decided I wasn't good enough for their social circle. I'm not suing you because I want my money back. I'm suing you because you need to understand that actions have consequences. You can't exclude someone from your family, call them a bad influence, use their love for their grandchildren as leverage, and then expect the bank to stay open. I'm not withholding Emma and Jack's college fund as punishment. I'm conditioning it on having a relationship with them because you've demonstrated that without conditions, you'll take everything and give nothing back. You're in pain right now. I understand that. Your marriage is built on lies, your finances are collapsing, and you're desperate. But you're responding to that pain by hurting everyone around you, me, your children, yourself. When you're ready to rebuild our relationship based on mutual respect instead of financial extraction, I'll be here. I'll always be here, but I won't go back to being your ATM while you treat me like garbage. I hope someday you understand that the strongest love sometimes means saying no. Dad, I saved the letter in my documents folder but didn't send it. Maybe I never would. But writing it helped clarify something important. I wasn't doing this to hurt Sarah. I was doing this to save myself, and maybe, if I was lucky, to save her from a marriage and a lifestyle that was destroying her from the inside out. The restraining order hearing was in 2 days. Whatever happened there would determine whether I had any chance of seeing my grandchildren again or whether Sarah had successfully cut me out of their lives completely. I looked at Patricia's photo on the mantel. I hope I'm doing the right thing, I told her, because I've never felt less sure about anything in my life. Thursday, December 21st, 1:45 p.m. The Multnomah County Courthouse looked especially imposing under the gray December sky. I'd been inside exactly twice before, once for Patricia's will proceedings, once to testify as a character witness for a former employee. Now I was here defending myself against my own daughter's accusation that I was a dangerous harasser. Margaret Torres met me at the security checkpoint carrying a leather briefcase that looked reassuringly thick with documentation. "How are you holding up?" she asked as we rode the elevator to the 3rd floor. "I've been better. Listen to me carefully. This is a temporary restraining order hearing, which means the standard of proof is low. Sarah just needs to show there's enough concern to justify protection while the court investigates further. Don't expect total vindication today. What should I expect? A judge who's trying to err on the side of caution, especially when children are involved. Our job is to present enough evidence that he sees Sarah's filing as strategic rather than protective." We entered courtroom 3C at 1:52 p.m. Sarah was already there with her attorney, Kevin Bradshaw, a man in his 40s with expensive hair and a suit that probably cost more than my first car. Derek sat behind them in the gallery, looking haggard. Catherine was there too, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue in a performance of maternal distress. Sarah wouldn't look at me, just stared straight ahead, jaw set, while Bradshaw whispered something to her. James had driven down again and sat in the back row of the gallery. When I caught his eye, he gave me a subtle nod. "You've got this." Judge Elizabeth Warren, no relation to the senator I'd learned, entered at 2:03 p.m. Mid-60s, gray hair pulled back severely, the kind of face that had seen every family court trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. "Be seated. This is the matter of Sarah Thornton's petition for a restraining order against Robert Mitchell. Miss Thornton is the petitioner. Mr. Mitchell is the respondent. Mr. Bradshaw, you may present your case." Kevin Bradshaw stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced precision. "Thank you, Your Honor. My client, Sarah Thornton, is here today because she fears for her safety and the safety of her minor children. The respondent, her father, has engaged in a pattern of harassment, financial coercion, and retaliatory behavior that has escalated dramatically in recent weeks. He approached the bench with a stack of papers. I'm submitting into evidence Exhibit A, a series of text messages and communications from Mr. Mitchell to my client showing an obsessive pattern of contact despite being asked to stop. I leaned toward Margaret. I barely texted her. Most of those are from her to me. I know, Margaret whispered. Let him talk. We'll dismantle it when it's our turn. Bradshaw continued, gaining momentum.
Repaid Exhibit B is a social media post by my client describing her father's financial abuse, using money to control her behavior and access to her children.
This post received over 200 responses from concerned friends and family members. Exhibit C is particularly concerning, Your Honor.
After my client set a reasonable boundary regarding holiday gatherings, a decision made in consultation with her therapist as part of establishing healthy family dynamics, Mr.
Mitchell retaliated by threatening legal action, demanding repayment of what he now falsely claims were loans and threatening to withhold educational funds from his grandchildren. Judge Warren examined the documents. Mr. Bradshaw, I see the demand letter here. It appears to be from Mr. Mitchell's attorney, not from Mr. Mitchell himself. The demand came at his direction, Your Honor. That's not harassment. That's a legal proceeding. What else? Bradshaw's confidence flickered. Your Honor, the harassment isn't just about the legal letters. It's about the pattern. After my client set boundaries, Mr. Mitchell hired a private investigator to surveil the family. Did he surveil them? Or did he investigate their financial situation as part of preparing a civil case? The effect is the same, Your Honor. Invasion of privacy. Intimidation. Mr. Bradshaw. Judge Warren's voice carried a warning. I'm asking you to distinguish between legal activity and harassment. Do you have evidence of actual harassment, threatening calls, showing up at their home unwanted? Anything that meets the statutory definition? Bradshaw shifted gears. Your Honor, most concerning is that Mr. Mitchell called Child Protective Services with false allegations of abuse, clearly as retaliation for my client's boundary setting. False allegations? Has CPS concluded their investigation? Well, no, Your Honor. It's ongoing. But the timing is suspect. So you don't know if the allegations are false. Your Honor, my client's husband briefly grabbed their son's arm during a discussion about his grandfather. No reasonable person would call that abuse. I'll decide what's reasonable. What evidence do you have that Mr. Mitchell's report was knowingly false? Bradshaw was floundering now. The timing, Your Honor. The same week he received our cease and desist letter, he called CPS. That's clearly retaliatory. Judge Warren made notes. Anything else? Yes, Your Honor. Most disturbingly, Mr.
Mitchell initiated contact with my client's 7-year-old daughter, engaging in a conversation clearly designed to manipulate the child and gather information to use against my client. He called his granddaughter. The child called him, but only
because Mr. Mitchell had previously given her his phone number with instructions to call any time. So, he gave his granddaughter his phone number. That's evidence of harassment, when used to manipulate a child against her mother. Mr. Bradshaw. Judge Warren set down her pen. I'm trying to understand what specific, actionable harassment you're alleging.
So far I have a legal demand letter sent through an attorney, a financial investigation conducted by a professional, a CPS report that hasn't been determined false, and a grandfather taking a phone call from his granddaughter.
What am I missing? Bradshaw looked at Sarah, who whispered something urgently. Your Honor, perhaps if my client could testify, she could better articulate the fear and emotional distress Mr. Mitchell's actions have caused. Fine. Call your client. Sarah took the stand, was sworn in, and sat with her hands folded in her lap. Perfect posture, perfect victim presentation. Ms. Thornton, Bradshaw began, can you describe your relationship with your father prior to recent events? It was complicated. Sarah's voice trembled slightly. My father has always been generous, but that generosity came with expectations.
He wanted control over my life, my marriage, my children.
When I tried to establish boundaries as an adult, he became angry and vindictive. Can you give an example of this control? He constantly questioned my husband's business decisions, implied I'd married the wrong person, and made my children feel guilty for not spending enough time with him. It created tension in my marriage and confusion for my kids. I gripped the table edge. Margaret put a restraining hand on my arm. "And what happened when you set boundaries regarding the holiday gathering?" I explained that my in-laws were visiting and we needed to limit attendance to immediate family this year.
It wasn't about excluding him. It was about managing a complex family situation. But he took it as a personal attack and immediately began threatening me financially. What threats did he make? He said he was cutting off all support.
That he'd been documenting everything, and I'd regret my decision. He hired a private investigator to dig into our finances, looking for ammunition. Then he sent a legal letter demanding $138,000, money he'd given us freely over the years as gifts. Were these gifts or loans? Gifts. He never once mentioned repayment until I set boundaries. That's when suddenly everything became a loan that had to be repaid immediately. "And the college fund for your children," Sarah's voice broke convincingly. "He threatened to withhold it unless I gave him unlimited access to my children. He's literally holding their education hostage to punish me for saying no to him." "Did his behavior escalate after you established these boundaries?" "Yes. He started texting constantly, showing up at places he knew I'd be, interrogating my friends about my marriage. When I didn't respond the way he wanted, he called CPS with lies about my husband." "Objection." Margaret stood. "There's no evidence the CPS report contained lies." "Sustained," Judge Warren said. "Ms. Thornton, stick to what you know, not characterizations." Sarah nodded, tears forming. "I'm terrified, Your Honor."
My father is a successful businessman who knows how to use the legal system. He has money and connections. I'm just trying to protect my children from his manipulation and control.
"I don't feel safe with him having unrestricted contact with my family." Bradshaw returned to his table. "Your Honor, we believe the evidence clearly shows a pattern of escalating harassment and financial coercion. We request a temporary restraining order protecting Ms. Thornton and her minor children from further contact while this matter is investigated." Judge Warren looked at Margaret. "Ms. Torres, your turn." Margaret stood, and I noticed she wasn't carrying any papers. Just walked to the center of the courtroom, empty-handed.
Your Honor, everything you just heard is a carefully constructed narrative designed to hide one simple truth. Sarah Thornton excluded her father from her family, accepted $138,000 of his money over 5 years while looking down on him, and now
doesn't want to face consequences for treating him like an ATM. She turned to Sarah.
Ms. Thornton, you testified these were gifts, not loans. Do you recall sending your father a text message on June 14, 2019 that read, "Dad, just a short-term loan until we get through this rough patch.
We'll pay you back as soon as Derek's commission check clears." Sarah blinked. I might have said that, but yes or no? Did you call it a loan? The word might have been used, but the understanding. And on March 3, 2020, did you email your father saying, "Thanks for the loan. We'll start paying you back monthly once Derek's business stabilizes"? I don't remember the exact. I have the email right here. Margaret produced a paper. Would you like me to refresh your memory? No. Fine. I said it was a loan, but it was just words. My father never expected what? Repayment. So when you called something a loan and promised to pay him back, you were lying. I wasn't lying. I meant it at the time. But you never paid back a single dollar, did you? We couldn't afford, yet you enrolled your children in a $64,000 a year private school. Bradshaw jumped up. Objection. Relevance. I'm establishing that Ms. Thornton could afford luxury expenses, but not repayment to her father, Margaret said calmly. Overruled. Continue. Margaret turned back to Sarah. Ms. Thornton, you testified that you set a boundary about the holiday gathering. Can you explain why that boundary was necessary? My in-laws were coming and what? Too many people at the table. It was complicated. Was it complicated, or did your mother-in-law tell you that your father wasn't the right kind of people for their family gathering? Sarah's face went red. That's not. She didn't mean. Did she? Or did she not say that your father's food was too ethnic and his conversation wasn't educated enough for their standards. She was expressing preferences based on class and ethnicity. You excluded your father from Christmas because your husband's family looks down on him. Yes or no? It wasn't that simple. It's exactly that simple. You chose your husband's snobbish parents over your own father, and when he stopped funding your lifestyle, you filed this restraining order to punish him. Isn't that true? No, I filed because I'm scared of him. Margaret's eyebrows rose. Scared? Has he ever hit you? No, but threatened violence. Not directly, but shown up at your house uninvited. He came over when I asked him to. So you invited him to your home, and you're scared of him. I'm scared of what he'll do with his money and his lawyers. So you're not physically scared. You're financially scared, because the free money stopped flowing. That's not fair. Your Honor, Margaret turned to the judge. This isn't a case of harassment. This is a case of consequences.
My client spent 8 years supporting his daughter financially. When she excluded him from her family because he wasn't sophisticated enough for her in-laws, he stopped the support and asked for repayment of documented loans. That's not harassment.
That's boundary setting. She approached the bench with her own stack of documents. I'm submitting evidence of Mr. Mitchell's actual behavior. Text messages where Ms. Thornton initiated contact, not him.
Bank records showing systematic transfers over 5 years. Communications where she explicitly called these funds loans and promised repayment.
A Facebook message from another parent at Jack's school reporting concerns about Derek grabbing the child hard enough to leave bruises, which prompted Mr. Mitchell's CPS report. Judge Warren examined the Facebook message. Who is Jennifer Paulson? Another mother at Jefferson Elementary, Your Honor. She's in the hallway. I can call her as a witness if needed. Do it. 5 minutes later, Jennifer Paulson, a nervous woman in her mid-30s, sat in the witness box. Ms. Paulson, how do you know the Thornton family? My son Tyler is in Jack's class. They're friends. Have you ever met Robert Mitchell? No, ma'am. I sent him a Facebook message because I recognized his name from Sarah's post, and I thought he should know what Jack told Tyler. What did Jack tell Tyler? That his dad grabbed him really hard during a fight about his grandpa. Tyler said Jack had bruises on his arm and was crying at recess. When I asked Jack if he was okay, he said his dad had been really angry lately and sometimes grabbed him or his sister when he was mad. The courtroom went silent. Derek's face had gone pale. Did you report this to anyone besides Mr. Mitchell? I told the school counselor. She said she'd look into it. Then a few days later, Jack wasn't in school, and I heard CPS had been called. Thank you, Ms. Paulson. Bradshaw stood for cross-examination. Ms. Paulson, isn't it true that children exaggerate, that Tyler might have misunderstood? Tyler didn't misunderstand the bruises, sir. We saw them, but you don't know how Jack got those bruises. Jack said his father grabbed him. Those were his words. Bradshaw had no response. Jennifer Paulson was dismissed. Judge Warren looked at Derek in the gallery. Mr. Thornton, is there a CPS investigation currently open? Derek stood slowly. Yes, Your Honor, but it's all a misunderstanding. I would never... Sit down. This isn't your hearing. She turned to Margaret. Anything else? Just this, Your Honor. Margaret pulled out one final document. Mr. Mitchell did attempt to call his granddaughter Emma once, to tell her he loved her and that none of this was her fault. The call was brief and appropriate. However, the call, Mr. Bradshaw characterized as manipulation, was actually initiated by Miss Thornton, who had Emma call Mr. Mitchell while listening on speakerphone and coaching the child to ask about money and say things designed to make Mr. Mitchell feel guilty. You have proof of this. Mr. Mitchell took detailed notes immediately after the call, documenting Emma's coached language and Sarah's voice in the background. Also, Ms. Thornton sent him a text immediately after, saying, "See what you're doing to her." That text makes no sense unless she was present during the call and orchestrated it. Judge Warren sat back in her chair, looking between Sarah and me. "Here's what I'm seeing," she said finally. "This is a family dispute over money and boundaries that has escalated badly. Mr. Mitchell, you've taken some aggressive steps, hiring investigators, sending legal demands, restructuring trust funds. Those are your legal rights, but they're not going to rebuild your relationship with your daughter or grandchildren. She turned to Sarah. Ms.
Thornton, you've presented this as a case of harassment and abuse, but the evidence shows you initiated most of the contact. You excluded your father first, and you used your daughter to manipulate him emotionally.
That's not the behavior of someone who fears harassment. Your Honor, Bradshaw started. I'm not finished. I'm also concerned about the CPS report and the independent corroboration from Ms. Paulson. Mr. Thornton, if CPS finds evidence of physical discipline that leaves marks, this court will take that very seriously. She made notes on her legal pad. I'm denying the restraining order. Ms. Thornton has not shown sufficient evidence of harassment or reasonable fear. However, I'm issuing the following orders pending further proceedings. My heart hammered as she continued. Mr. Mitchell, you are not to initiate contact with Ms.
Thornton, or appear at her residence uninvited. All communication regarding the financial dispute goes through attorneys. However, you may initiate reasonable contact with your grandchildren via phone or video call, supervised by a neutral third party if Miss Thornton prefers. Miss Thornton, you are not to interfere with Mr. Mitchell's relationship with his grandchildren, or use them to gather information, or manipulate him emotionally. The court takes a very dim view of parental alienation. Both parties are ordered to mediation before any further legal proceedings.
Perhaps a neutral mediator can help you resolve this like adults instead of weaponizing the court system. She banged her gavel. This hearing is adjourned. I stood on shaky legs as the courtroom emptied. Sarah rushed out without looking at me, Bradshaw and Catherine following. Derek lingered for a moment, his expression unreadable, then left too. James appeared at my side. You okay? I think so. Margaret packed up her briefcase. That went better than I expected. Judge Warren saw through the manipulation. The restraining order denial is huge. It means you can still have contact with the kids. But mediation might actually help. A good mediator will see what Judge Warren saw, that Sarah's been exploiting you financially, and you finally set boundaries. This gives you leverage to negotiate real terms for moving forward. Jennifer Paulson approached hesitantly. Mr. Mitchell, I'm sorry if I caused trouble. I just thought you should know about Jack. You didn't cause trouble. You might have saved my grandson from worse harm. Thank you. She nodded and left. I walked out of the courthouse into cold December air that felt like freedom. The restraining order had been denied. I could still talk to Emma and Jack. Judge Warren had seen through Sarah's manipulation, but I'd also seen something else in that courtroom. My daughter had become someone I didn't recognize. Someone willing to use her children as weapons, to lie under oath, to paint her father as an abuser to avoid facing consequences for her choices. What do I do now? I asked James as we walked to the parking garage. Now, you go home, you rest, and you wait for Sarah to realize she's lost. Because that judge just took away her biggest weapon, the ability to cut you off from Emma and Jack. And without that leverage, she's got nothing. What about Derek? The CPS investigation. That's out of your hands. Either CPS finds evidence of abuse or they don't, but you did the right thing reporting it. If Derek's hurting those kids, he is. Jack had bruises. Jennifer Paulson saw them. Then CPS will find them, and when they do, everything changes. We drove back to my house in silence. Inside, I poured 2 glasses of whiskey and sat at my kitchen table, with the weight of the day settling over me. I'd won, technically. The restraining order was denied. But winning felt hollow when what I'd really wanted was my family back. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Mitchell, this is Jennifer Paulson. Tyler told me something else tonight after we got home from court. Jack told him his parents are talking about moving to Boston to live with his grandmother. He said they might leave right after Christmas. I thought you should know. I showed the text to James. They're running, he said. They know CPS is investigating. They know they can't pay you back. They know Judge Warren saw through their bullshit. So they're going to grab the kids and run to Boston, where Charles's family has connections. Can they do that? If there's no custody order preventing it? Yeah, they're the parents. They can move wherever they want, even with an active CPS investigation, especially with an active CPS investigation. Get ahead of it geographically. Make Oregon CPS coordinate with Massachusetts CPS. Drag everything out until everyone forgets. I stared at the text message, a cold knot forming in my stomach. I'd thought the hearing was the crisis point, the moment where truth won and everything got better. Instead, it was just the beginning of Sarah's next move, and this time, she was planning to take Emma and Jack somewhere I couldn't reach them. Thursday, December 21st, 10:47 p.m. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at Jennifer Paulson's text while James paced behind me, phone pressed to his ear. "Marcus, it's James Mitchell, Rob's brother. I need you to do something tonight. Find out if Derek or Sarah Thornton have purchased airline tickets to Boston. Check car rentals, too. They're planning to run, and we need to know when." He listened then. "I don't care if it's midnight, this is urgent. Call me back within the hour." After he hung up, I finally found my voice. Can they really just leave, take the kids across the country while CPS is investigating? Technically, yes. Unless there's a court order preventing it, parents can relocate. But if CPS finds out they fled an active investigation, that looks terrible. And if we can prove they're running specifically to avoid accountability, then what? Then maybe we can get an emergency custody order. Maybe. It's a long shot, Rob. I called Margaret Torres, not caring that it was nearly 11 p.m. "Robert, what's wrong?" "They're planning to run, Boston, probably right after Christmas. I just got a tip from another parent." Silence while she processed. "That complicates things. If they establish residency in Massachusetts, Oregon courts lose jurisdiction. You'd have to start over in Boston courts, and by then they'd have created a whole new narrative. Can we stop them? Maybe. If CPS has enough evidence to support an emergency protective order, they could prevent the parents from removing the children from the state. But that requires CPS to believe the children are in imminent danger. Derek's leaving bruises on Jack. I know, but CPS has been investigating for less than a week. They need more than one report and one witness. They need documentation, medical evidence, multiple incidents. Right now it's just enough to investigate, not enough to intervene. So we just let them go. No, we push CPS to accelerate their investigation. And we file for emergency grandparents' visitation rights. If a judge grants those rights and orders supervised visits, Sarah can't leave the state without violating a court order. How fast can you file that? I can have it ready first thing tomorrow morning. But Rob, even emergency motions take time. We're talking about getting on a judge's calendar during the week before Christmas. It might be Monday or Tuesday before we get a hearing. They'll be gone by then. Not if we can slow them down. Let me make some calls. Meanwhile, document everything. If you hear anything else about their plans, save it, screenshot it, forward it to me immediately. After she hung up, James's phone rang. "Marcus Webb." James put it on speaker. "What did you find?" 3 one-way tickets to Boston on Alaska Airlines, departing Portland 6:45 a.m. on December 26th. Sarah, Derek, and both kids. They booked them today, about 2 hours after the court hearing. My stomach dropped. December 26th. 5 days from now. What about return tickets? None. This isn't a visit, Mr. Mitchell. This is a permanent move. What else? James asked. Derek's been liquidating assets.
He transferred his business bank account, what's left of it, about $8,000, to a personal account yesterday. He's been calling moving companies, asking about shipping household goods cross-country.
And here's the interesting part. He called a storage facility in Boston 3 days ago, asking about climate-controlled units. They've been planning this for at least a week, I said quietly. Before the hearing, before any of this went public, they always intended to run. Looks that way. Also, Charles Thornton's bankruptcy filing includes a clause allowing him to rent out rooms in his Boston house. Guess who's planning to be his tenants? Sarah and Derek. Bingo. Rent-free living while they get back on their feet. Charles gets to keep his house, Derek gets free rent, Sarah gets distance from you, and everyone gets to dodge CPS. After Marcus hung up, James and I sat in silence. They're not just running from you, James said finally. They're running from everything. The debt, the investigation, the consequences. Boston is their reset button. What do? You fight. Tomorrow. Hard. And you pray. We can throw enough legal obstacles in their path to slow them down until CPS finishes their investigation. Friday, December 22nd, 8:15. Margaret called as I was making coffee. I'd never drink. I filed the emergency grandparents visitation motion at 8 a.m. Earliest we can get a hearing is Tuesday, December 26th at 9 a.m. Their flight leaves at 6:45 a.m. that day. I know, which means either they miss their flight to attend the hearing or they leave and get found in contempt. Either way, we've created a legal complication for them. Will that be enough? By itself? No. But I also contacted CPS and told them about the planned move. They're sending someone to the Thornton house today for an unannounced check-in. If they see evidence of packing, of preparation to leave, it elevates the case. And if CPS doesn't find anything, then we hope the emergency hearing on Tuesday scares them into staying. Or we accept that they're leaving and prepare to fight this battle in Massachusetts. I can't fight them from 3,000 miles away, Margaret. I'm 72 years old. I don't have the energy or resources to chase them across the country. Then, we need to stop them before they leave. After I hung up, I sat with the weight of that statement. Stop them. But how? My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Sarah, I heard you got Jennifer Paulson to testify against us, using another parent to spy on our family. That's a new low, even for you. I hope you're proud of yourself. I didn't respond. Margaret's advice, don't engage. Another text, 5 minutes later. Sarah, you want to know why we're leaving? Because you've made Portland toxic for us. Our friends won't talk to us because of your smear campaign. Derek's business is destroyed because of your investigator spreading rumors. You've systematically ruined our lives, and now you're surprised we want to start over somewhere safe. My hands shook as I read it. I'd ruined their lives. I'd destroyed Derek's business. The gaslighting was breathtaking. Sarah, the kids deserve better than this. They deserve a home where their grandfather isn't weaponizing the legal system against their parents. I'm doing what's best for my children. You'll understand someday. Or maybe you won't. Either way, we're done. Done. That word again. Final. I forwarded the texts to Margaret with a note. She's justifying the move, blaming me for making Portland toxic. This is her exit narrative. Margaret responded, perfect. She just gave us evidence that the move is retaliatory, not in the children's best interest. Save everything. Friday, December 22nd, 2:30 p.m. The CPS caseworker, a woman named Linda Reeves, called me directly. Mr. Mitchell, I wanted to update you on our investigation. I visited the Thornton home this morning. And the children were at school. Mr. and Mrs. Thornton were cooperative but defensive. I observed that the home is being packed. Boxes stacked in the garage, furniture tagged with color-coded labels. When I asked about it, Mrs. Thornton said they were doing pre-Christmas organization. They're fleeing the state. They have one-way tickets to Boston on December 26th. A pause. How do you know that? Private investigator. They're moving in with Derek's father, who just filed for bankruptcy in Massachusetts. This is a planned escape. That's concerning. If they're leaving the state during an active investigation, that significantly changes my assessment. I need to interview the children before they leave. Can you stop them from leaving? Not without a court order, but I can expedite my investigation and make a recommendation to the court. Can you get me the flight information? I forwarded Marcus Webb's findings immediately. Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to request an emergency case conference with my supervisor. If we can document current harm or imminent risk, we might be able to seek a protective order, but I need more than one incident. Do you have any other evidence of physical discipline? Tyler Paulson said Jack had mentioned his father grabbing him multiple times when he's angry. Jennifer Paulson can probably get you Tyler's statement. I'll contact her. In the meantime, when did you last speak with your grandchildren? Emma called me Sunday. It was clearly coached by Sarah, designed to manipulate me. Would you be willing to do a supervised call with Jack? I could be present, observe the interaction, ask him some questions in a natural context.
Absolutely. When? This afternoon, if possible. I want to do it before the weekend. Once families batten down for Christmas, everything gets harder. We arranged for 5 p.m. Linda Reeves would come to my house, facilitate a video call with Jack, and assess whether he showed signs of fear, anxiety, or physical harm.
Friday, December 22nd, 5 p.m. Linda Reeves was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with kind eyes and a professional demeanor that probably put frightened children at ease. She set up her laptop at my kitchen table and dialed the Thorntons' number. Sarah answered on video, her face tight. This wasn't scheduled. Mrs. Thornton, I'd like Jack to speak with his grandfather briefly. I'll be present to supervise. 5 minutes. I don't think that's appropriate. Mrs. Thornton, this is part of my investigation. You can either facilitate a 5-minute call, or I can note in my report that you obstructed access between a child and his grandfather during a welfare check. Your choice. Sarah's jaw clenched. Fine. Jack! My grandson appeared on screen, and my heart broke all over again. He looked thin, tired, with dark circles under his eyes that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. Hey, Jack, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Hi, Grandpa. His voice was small, uncertain. How are you doing, buddy? Okay, I guess. School going all right? Yeah, we're on Christmas break now. That's right. Any plans for the break? He glanced off camera, probably at Sarah. Maybe. Mom says we might visit Grandma and Grandpa Thornton. That sounds nice. Boston, right? Yeah, they have snow there. Linda Reeves leaned into frame. Hi, Jack, my name is Linda. I'm a friend of your grandpa's. Can I ask you a couple questions? Jack nodded warily. I heard you've been doing really well in school this year. What's your favorite subject? Science. We're learning about planets. That's cool. Do you feel safe at home, Jack? His eyes went wide. What do you mean? Just checking that everything's okay. Sometimes kids need to talk to grown-ups about things that worry them. Do you have any worries right now? Jack's gaze darted off camera again. No, everything's fine. Has anyone hurt you recently? Even accidentally? No, but his hand went to his upper arm, the one Tyler Paulson had said was bruised. Can I see your arm, Jack? Just to make sure you haven't been hurt playing sports or anything. I'm wearing long sleeves. I know. Can you roll up your sleeve? Just for a second. I don't want to. Linda's voice stayed gentle. Oh, why not, honey? Because. He looked off camera again, then back at Linda with fear in his eyes. I'm not supposed to. Who told you you're not supposed to show your arms? My dad said. He caught himself. Nobody. I just don't want to. Sarah's voice came from off-screen. This interview is over. Jack, say goodbye to Grandpa. But Mom, now Jack. My grandson looked at me one more time, his eyes brimming with tears. Bye, Grandpa. I love you. The screen went black before I could respond. Linda Reeves sat back, her expression grim. That was instructive. He's scared of showing his arms. And he almost said his father told him not to. That's called coaching a witness, and it's a huge red flag. She made notes on her laptop. Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to recommend an emergency protective order. Based on what I just saw, combined with the flight risk and the previous reports, I believe these children are in potential danger. What happens next? I file my recommendation tonight. It goes to a judge for emergency review. If approved, law enforcement will serve the order, which could include supervised contact only, mandatory evaluations, or in extreme cases, temporary removal of the children. Will it stop them from leaving? If the judge includes a travel restriction, yes. The order would prohibit removing the children from Oregon pending further investigation. When will you know? Emergency orders can be issued same day if there's sufficient cause. I'm going to push for that, given the December 26th flight. But Mr. Mitchell, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this doesn't happen fast enough. After Linda left, I sat in my kitchen as darkness fell outside. Jack's face haunted me, the fear in his eyes when asked to show his arm, the coached response, the way he'd looked off camera for approval before speaking. My grandson was being hurt and intimidated into silence. And in 4 days, Sarah and Derek were going to take him 3,000 miles away, where no one could help him. My phone buzzed. James. Turn on Channel 8 News, now. I fumbled for the remote and found the local station. A reporter stood outside a familiar building, Derek's office. Federal investigators raided the offices of Thornton Strategic Consulting earlier today, seizing computers and documents as part of what sources say is a fraud investigation. Derek Thornton, the firm's principal, could not be reached for comment. According to filed documents, several clients have alleged that Thornton misrepresented his credentials and experience, charging premium rates for services he was not qualified to provide. The FBI is investigating whether this constitutes wire fraud. This is a developing story. I stared at the television in shock. Federal investigation. Wire fraud. The FBI. Derek wasn't just failing as a consultant. He'd been running a scam. My phone rang. Margaret Torres. Did you see the news? I'm watching it now. Rob, this changes everything. If Derek's facing federal charges, there's no way CPS lets those kids leave the state. And if Sarah knew about the fraud, if she was complicit in any way, she could be facing charges too. Do you think she knew? I think she had to know something. You don't live with someone running a fraudulent business without noticing irregularities. But that's for the FBI to determine. What do? We wait. Derek's world is crumbling around him, which makes him exponentially more dangerous. If he's desperate enough to run from federal charges. She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. Desperate men do desperate things. And Derek Thornton was a cornered animal. Saturday, December 23rd, 6:47. I woke to pounding on my front door, threw on a robe and stumbled downstairs to find 2 FBI agents on my porch, badges out. Robert Mitchell. Yes. Special Agent Kim Harrison, FBI. This is Special Agent Marcus Wright. We'd like to ask you some questions about your son-in-law, Derek Thornton. I let them in, made coffee I'd actually drink this time, and spent the next 90 minutes answering questions about Derek's business, his relationship with Sarah, and most importantly, the financial support I'd provided over the years. So you gave them roughly $138,000 over 5 years? Agent Harrison asked. Yes. Most of it went to Derek's business, I now know. Were you aware that Thornton Strategic Consulting was claiming partnerships with firms that don't exist? That Mr. Thornton was representing himself as having an MBA from Harvard when he actually attended for 1 semester before dropping out? No. I knew he had business struggles, but I didn't know he was lying to clients. Several of your son-in-law's clients have filed complaints alleging fraud. He accepted retainers for strategic consulting services, claimed credentials he didn't have, and delivered work that appears to be plagiarized from publicly available sources. We're investigating whether this constitutes federal wire fraud since payments cross state lines. Is Sarah involved? Agent Wright answered this time. We can't comment on ongoing investigations. But we'd like access to your financial records showing the transfers to your daughter and son-in-law. It may help us establish when Mr. Thornton's fraudulent activities began and whether other parties knew about them. I gave them everything. Bank statements, transfer records, the entire documented history of my financial support. They left at 8:30 a.m. with 3 file boxes of evidence. James came downstairs as they were leaving. FBI? Jesus, Rob. Derek's been running a fraud scheme. Fake credentials, plagiarized work, non-existent partnerships. They think it's wire fraud, which is a federal felony carrying 20 years. And they asked about Sarah, whether she knew. We looked at each other, both thinking the same thing. If Sarah was charged as an accomplice, if she faced prison time, what happened to Emma and Jack? My phone rang. Linda Reeves. Mr. Mitchell, I have good news and bad news. The good news is Judge Martinez signed an emergency protective order at 7:00 a.m. this morning. It prohibits Derek and Sarah Thornton from removing the children from Oregon pending further investigation. That's excellent. The bad news is when police went to serve the order 30 minutes ago, the house was empty. The Thorntons are gone. And so are the children. The world tilted. Gone? Gone where? We don't know. Their car is missing. Neighbors say they heard activity around 4 a.m. People loading vehicles, doors closing, engines starting. By the time our order was issued, they'd already fled. Their flight isn't until December 26th. They must have changed plans. We've issued an amber alert for the children, but they have a 3-hour head start. Mr. Mitchell, I'm sorry. We moved as fast as we could. I sank into a chair, phone pressed to my ear but not hearing anything anymore. They were gone. Sarah had taken Emma and Jack and run. Rob! James's voice came from far away. Rob, what is it? They're gone, I said numbly. Sarah and Derek took the kids and ran. Somewhere. We don't know where. James grabbed his phone. I'm calling Marcus. If they're on the road, we can find them. But I barely heard him. All I could think about was Emma's small voice on the phone. Are you still going to love us even if we can't see you? And Jack's terrified eyes when asked to show his arm. Somewhere out there, my grandchildren were in a car with a man facing federal fraud charges and a woman who'd chosen him over her own father, running from the law, from CPS, from accountability, and I had no idea how to find them. Saturday, December 23rd, 7:15 a.m. Marcus Webb arrived at my house within 40 minutes, laptop already open, tracking software running. Okay, let's think this through. They left around 4 a.m. It's now 7:15. They have a 3-hour head start. In 3 hours, driving speed limit. They could be anywhere within a 200-mile radius. That doesn't narrow it down much, James said. Actually, it does. They're not going to Boston. Too obvious with an Amber Alert active and FBI looking for Derek. They need somewhere to hide short-term while they figure out their next move. Somewhere familiar. Somewhere they have connections. He pulled up a map. I'm betting they head east, toward the gorge or into central Oregon. Remote enough to hide, close enough that they didn't need to risk a long drive. What about Sarah's credit cards? Can you track those? Already on it. Last transaction was at a gas station in Troutdale at 4:47 a.m. $65 in gas. That's eastbound on I-84. He zoomed in on the map. After Troutdale, you hit Hood River, then the Dalles, then you're into central Oregon. Lots of small towns, vacation rentals, places you could disappear for a few days. Check vacation rentals, I said. Sarah's methodical. She wouldn't just drive without a destination. Marcus's fingers flew across the keyboard. Give me 15 minutes. While he worked, Linda Reeves called back. Mr. Mitchell, Oregon State Police has the Amber Alert active. Derek Thornton is also wanted for questioning by the FBI regarding the fraud investigation, which gives us additional cause to locate them urgently. Do you have any idea where they might go? Family properties, vacation homes, places they've mentioned? I tried to think through 8 years of conversations. Sarah used to talk about a cabin Derek's family owns, somewhere in central Oregon, near Sisters, I think. His father used it for hunting trips. Do you have an address? No, but Charles Thornton would. He's in Boston. The FBI probably has his contact information. I'll follow up. If you think of anything else, call me immediately. After 15 minutes, Marcus looked up from his laptop. Got something. A vacation rental in Camp Sherman, about 15 miles from Sisters. Booked 3 days ago, under the name Catherine Williamson. That's Sarah's mother's maiden name. 2 adults, 2 children, checking in December 23rd. That's today. Exactly. It's a small cabin on the Metolius River. Remote, off-season, perfect place to hide, while figuring out Plan B. James was already grabbing his keys. How far? 2.5 hours from here. But Rob, we can't just show up. We need law enforcement. Call Linda Reeves, I said, standing. Tell her we found them. James and I are leaving now. Rob, if Derek's desperate, those are my grandchildren. I'm going. Saturday, December 23rd, 7:45 a.m. James drove while I called Margaret Torres and then Linda Reeves with the Camp Sherman information. Linda said Oregon State Police would dispatch units immediately, but it would take time to coordinate. Mr. Mitchell, please don't approach the cabin yourself. Derek Thornton is potentially facing federal charges. He may be armed. He's definitely desperate. Let law enforcement handle this. We'll wait for them, but I'm going. I can't stop you, but I can tell you it's a terrible idea. After I hung up, James glanced at me. She's right, you know. This could go badly. I don't care. Emma and Jack are terrified. They're in a car with a man who's been hurting them, running from the FBI. I'm not sitting at home waiting for news. We drove in silence for a while, Highway 26 stretching east through forest and mountain passes. As we climbed toward Mount Hood, James finally spoke. "What are you going to say to her?" "To Sarah." I'd been thinking about that for the last hour. I don't know. Part of me wants to scream at her for what she's done. Another part just wants to hold Emma and Jack and tell them they're safe. "She's still your daughter." "Is she?" "Because the woman who took those kids and ran, who coached Emma to manipulate me, who lied in court, who chose a fraudster over her own father, I don't recognize her. People do crazy things when they're scared. That doesn't excuse it. No, but it might explain it." James passed a slow-moving truck. "Sarah's been living a lie for 8 years, Rob. She married a con artist who picked her for her father's money. She's been pretending to be wealthier than she is, living beyond her means, probably knowing deep down that it was all fake. And instead of facing it, she kept going deeper. Now it's all collapsing, and she's in full panic mode. That's remarkably empathetic for someone who called her a manipulative bitch 3 days ago. I can be empathetic and still think she's wrong. Both things are true." We reached Camp Sherman at 10:17 a.m. The tiny community was exactly as Marcus had described. Remote, quiet, a handful of cabins scattered among ponderosa pines along the Metolius River. This time of year, most would be empty. James pulled over at the general store. "Let me ask about the cabin. You stay here, they might recognize you." He came back 5 minutes later with directions. "Third cabin past the bridge, blue shutters. Woman at the store, said a family checked in about 2 hours ago. Dark SUV, Oregon plates." "That's them. Rob, we should wait for state police." "We will, but I want eyes on that cabin. I want to know my grandchildren are okay." We drove slowly past the bridge, and there it was, a small A-frame cabin with blue shutters, Sarah's Mercedes SUV parked in the gravel driveway. Smoke came from the chimney, lights on inside. James parked 100 yards down the road, concealed by trees. "Now we wait. How long until state police arrives?" Linda said 45 minutes minimum. "They're coming from Bend." I stared at the cabin, knowing Emma and Jack were inside. So close, just across a patch of forest and river. I can't just sit here. "Rob, I'm not going to knock on the door. I just want to see. Make sure they're really there." James sighed. "Fine, but I'm coming with you. And if Derek comes out, we run." "Deal." "Deal." We moved through the trees carefully, approaching from the riverside where we'd be less visible. The cabin's back windows looked out over the Metolius, crystal clear water running over smooth stones. Through those windows I could see into the main living area. Derek paced back and forth, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing angrily. Sarah sat on a couch, head in her hands. And there, my heart clenched, Emma and Jack sat at a small table, coloring books open in front of them, looking small and scared. "They're okay," James whispered. "They're safe for now." Derek's voice carried through the thin cabin walls, angry and desperate. "Don't care what they're saying on the news. I didn't defraud anyone. Those clients didn't understand the contract terms. That's not my fault." He stopped, listening. Then, "What do you mean?" "The FBI froze the accounts. How am I supposed to—" "Dad, listen to me. You said you'd help us. We need money for gas, for food, for—" More listening. His face went red. "So that's it? You're just abandoning us? We're about to lose everything because of you, because you pushed me into that business, because you said—" He threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall, inches from where Jack sat. My grandson flinched, hunching his shoulders. Sarah stood up. "Derek, calm down. You're scaring the kids." "Scaring them. I'm scaring them. Your father destroyed our lives, and I'm the one scaring them. My father set boundaries after you, after we—" She caught herself. "After we what, Sarah? Say it." "After we lived off his money while treating him like garbage." Derek's laugh was bitter. "Yeah, that was all me. You had nothing to do with it. You didn't cut him off from Christmas. You didn't coach Emma to manipulate him. You didn't stand in court and lie about him being abusive. I was trying to protect our family. By running from the FBI, by kidnapping our children and hiding in the woods? That's your idea of protection. What choice did I have? You're the one facing fraud charges. You're the one who lied about your credentials, who plagiarized work, who took money from clients for services you couldn't deliver. I did what I had to do to maintain our lifestyle, the lifestyle you demanded. The private school, the country club, the Mercedes, the house that's twice what we could afford. You wanted all of it, Sarah. I wanted my children to have opportunities. You wanted to impress your in-laws. You wanted to be Catherine Thornton, summer in the Hamptons, charity luncheon attending, better than your blue-collar father. Derek's voice dripped with contempt. And now that it's all falling apart, you want to blame me. We're in this together, princess. I'm the con artist, but you're the one who married me, knowing exactly what I was. Sarah's face crumbled. I didn't know. Bullshit! You knew I didn't have an MBA. You knew my business was struggling. You knew your father's money was the only thing keeping us afloat. You just didn't care as long as you could play the perfect social climber. Stop it! Emma's small voice cut through the argument. Please stop fighting. Both parents ignored her. Derek continued. And now what? We're hiding in a cabin with an Amber Alert and FBI looking for us. We've got maybe $300 in cash, and your father, the man you threw away, he's probably the only person who could help us. And we've burned that bridge so thoroughly there's not even ashes left. Then what do you suggest? Sarah's voice was shrill now. Turn ourselves in. Watch you go to prison? Let CPS take our children? Maybe. That would be better than this. Derek gestured around the cabin. At least in prison, I'd have 3 meals a day. Jack started crying quietly. Emma put her arm around him, trying to comfort her brother while their parents' marriage disintegrated around them. I'd seen enough. Started toward the cabin door. James grabbed my arm. Rob, wait for the police. I shook him off and walked around to the front door. Knocked firmly. The arguing inside stopped instantly. Footsteps. The door cracked open and Derek's face appeared, going white when he saw me. What are you? How did you? FBI tracked your mother's credit card rental. State police are 15 minutes away. It's over, Derek. He tried to close the door. I pushed it open and stepped inside. Sarah stood in the middle of the room, frozen. Emma and Jack looked up from their coloring books, confusion and hope warring on their faces. Grandpa, Emma whispered. Hi, sweetheart. Are you okay? She nodded, but her eyes filled with tears. Derek found his voice. You can't be here. This is trespassing. I'll call the… Who? The police. Please do. They're already on their way. There's an Amber Alert out for your children. You fled an emergency protective order. The FBI wants to question you about wire fraud. And I'm betting when they search this cabin, they're going to find evidence you were planning to run even further. Derek's hand moved toward the back of his waistband. James, who'd followed me in, saw it too. Derek, don't. I'm not going to prison, because some entitled clients didn't understand. You lied, I said calmly. You claimed credentials you didn't have, partnerships that didn't exist. You took people's money knowing you couldn't deliver what you promised. That's fraud, plain and simple. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I ran a business for 40 years. A legitimate business. Built on actual work, actual credentials, actual relationships. You built a house of cards and expected my money to keep it from collapsing. Sarah finally spoke, her voice small. Dad, please, we just need a little time to figure things out. Time? I looked at her directly for the first time. Sarah, you kidnapped your children and fled an emergency protective order. There is no figuring things out. They're surrendering to the police and hoping a judge shows mercy. I didn't kidnap them. They're my children. You removed them from the state against a court order issued by a judge who determined they were at risk. That's parental kidnapping under Oregon law. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Derek's face went through several emotions: fear, anger, resignation. This is all your fault. If you'd just kept giving us money, if you'd just been the dutiful father and shut up about Christmas dinner, none of this would have happened. You're right, I said quietly. If I'd continued enabling you, you'd still be running your scam business and hurting my grandchildren. I should have stopped funding you years ago. That's my mistake, and I own it. We could have worked it out. No, you couldn't. Because you're not interested in work. You're interested in shortcuts and cons and other people's money. That's who you are, Derek. A fraud who married my daughter to access my bank account. That's not. I love Sarah. Do you? Because I've watched you for 8 years, and all I've seen is a man using her the same way you used your clients. Fake credentials, false promises, and exit strategies when the truth comes out. The sirens were loud now, just down the road. Red and blue lights flashed through the trees. Derek moved suddenly toward the back door. James blocked his path. "Don't make this worse! Your kids are watching!" And they were. Emma and Jack stood now, pressed against the wall, tears streaming down both their faces as their world collapsed around them. I knelt down to their level. "Emma, Jack, come here." They ran to me, both of them, throwing their arms around my neck. I held them tight, feeling their small bodies shake with sobs. "It's okay," I whispered. "Grandpa's here. You're safe now." "Are you going to leave again?" Emma asked against my shoulder. "No, sweetheart. I'm not leaving. I promise." The door burst open. 4 Oregon State Police troopers, weapons drawn. "Derek Thornton, put your hands where we can see them." Derek raised his hands slowly. "This is a misunderstanding. Mr. Thornton, you're wanted for questioning by the FBI regarding fraud charges. You're also in violation of an emergency protective order. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." As they cuffed Derek, Sarah sank to the floor, sobbing. "Please, not in front of the children. Please." One of the troopers turned to her. "Mrs. Thornton, I need you to stand up. You're also being detained for violating the emergency protective order." "I'm their mother." "I was protecting them. You removed them from the state against a court order, ma'am. That's custodial interference. Stand up, please." Linda Reeves arrived moments later, rushing in past the police. She went straight to Emma and Jack, still clinging to me. "Hi, guys. My name is Linda. I'm here to make sure you're okay. Can I check and make sure neither of you is hurt?" Emma pulled back from me slightly. "We're not hurt, just scared." "I know, honey. That was really scary. But you're safe now." Linda looked at me. "Mr. Mitchell, thank you for finding them. Can you stay with the children while we process the parents?" "I'm not going anywhere." Outside, Derek was loaded into one police car, still protesting his innocence. Sarah into another, her perfect makeup destroyed by tears and the sudden recognition that her choices had consequences. Before they closed her car door, Sarah looked back at the cabin one last time. Our eyes met through the window, and I saw everything there. Regret, shame, desperation, and the desperate hope that somehow this could still be fixed. I looked away first. Saturday, December 23rd, 2:30 p.m. The state police took statements from everyone. James, me, even Emma and Jack in age-appropriate language with Linda Reeves present. Through it all, my grandchildren stayed close to me, Emma holding my hand, Jack pressed against my side. When Linda asked Jack to show his arms, he looked at me first. "It's okay, buddy. Nobody's going to be mad." He rolled up his sleeves. Bruises, greenish-yellow with age, covered both forearms. Finger-mark bruises, unmistakable. "Jack," Linda said gently, "who hurt you?" "Dad, when he got mad about Grandpa. He said I wasn't supposed to talk about it." Linda documented everything with photos, then checked Emma. No visible bruises, but when asked if anyone had hurt her, she said quietly, "Dad yells a lot. And he grabbed my arm once when I was crying about Grandpa. It didn't leave marks like Jack's, but it scared me." By 3:11 p.m., Child Protective Services had made their decision. "Mr. Mitchell, we're recommending emergency placement with you pending investigation and hearings. The children are clearly bonded to you. They've expressed feeling unsafe with their father, and there's documented evidence of physical discipline. Are you willing to take temporary custody?" "Yes, absolutely. It'll be temporary while we investigate and the courts sort out the parents' legal situation. But for now, Emma and Jack will stay with you." Emma burst into tears, this time from relief. Jack just squeezed my hand tighter. We drove back to Portland as the December afternoon faded to dusk. James drove again while I sat in back between Emma and Jack. They fell asleep within 20 minutes. Exhausted from fear and adrenaline, I looked at their faces, peaceful now, safe, and felt something break open in my chest. Not quite joy, not quite relief, something more complicated. Grief for the family I'd lost, gratitude for the family I'd saved, and the heavy responsibility of knowing that Emma and Jack's world had just been shattered. James caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "You did good, Rob. I just want them safe. They are now, because of you." We pulled into my driveway as full darkness fell. I carried Emma inside while Jack stumbled along beside me, half asleep. Got them settled in the guest rooms that had been empty for too long. As I tucked Emma into bed, she grabbed my hand. "Grandpa, are you mad at Mommy?" I thought about my answer carefully. I'm disappointed in some choices she made, but I love her, and I'll always love her, just like I love you. That never changes. Is she going to jail? I don't know, sweetheart, but whatever happens, you and Jack are going to be okay. I promise. Because you'll be here? Because I'll be here. She fell asleep, holding my hand. I sat with her until her breathing evened out, then checked on Jack, who was already unconscious, clutching the stuffed elephant they'd won together at the fair. Downstairs, James had ordered pizza and poured me a whiskey I desperately needed. "Margaret called," he said. "Derek's being held without bail pending FBI charges. Sarah's been released on her own recognizance but can't leave Oregon. First hearing is December 28th. What happens to her depends on what the FBI finds. If she was just ignorant of Derek's fraud, probably probation and supervised visitation. If she was complicit," he shrugged, "could be worse." We ate pizza in silence, too exhausted for conversation. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Mitchell, this is Sarah. They gave me one phone call. I used it to get this number to text you. I know you have every right to hate me, but please take care of my babies. Whatever I did wrong, they don't deserve to suffer for it. Please keep them safe. Sarah." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "They're safe. They always were safe with me. That's what you never understood." I didn't wait for a response. Just set the phone down and looked at the Christmas tree I'd finally put up that morning, lights twinkling in the dark living room. Upstairs, my grandchildren slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt something close to peace. Christmas Eve, December 24th. I woke at 6 a.m. to find Emma standing in my bedroom doorway, clutching the stuffed elephant. "Grandpa, can we make pancakes? Chocolate chip? With extra chips? Is there any other kind?" We made pancakes together while Jack slept in. Emma stood on the step stool Patricia had bought years ago, helping me mix the batter, adding what was probably twice the recommended amount of chocolate chips. "Grandpa, are Mom and Dad going to come get us?" I flipped a pancake, buying time to find the right words. "Not right now, sweetheart. Your Mom and Dad have some grown-up problems they need to fix. But you and Jack are going to stay with me for a while. Is that okay?" "Yeah." She was quiet for a moment. "I missed you. When we couldn't see you, I missed you so much my tummy hurt. I missed you too. Every single day. Mom said you were mad at us." I knelt down to her level, flour on my hands, chocolate chips on hers. Emma rose. "Look at me. I was never, ever mad at you or Jack. Not for 1 second. Grown-ups sometimes have disagreements, but that has nothing to do with how much I love you. Understand?" She nodded, tears forming. "Can we live here forever? We'll take it one day at a time. But for now, this is home." Jack appeared in the doorway, hair sticking up in every direction. "Are those chocolate chip pancakes? With extra chips? Best Christmas ever." After breakfast, I called Margaret Torres. "What's the situation?" "Derek's federal arraignment is scheduled for January 4th. The FBI has enough for wire fraud charges. Multiple counts. He's looking at significant prison time if convicted. Sarah's hearing is Wednesday, December 27th. She's charged with custodial interference for violating the protective order. The DA might drop it to a misdemeanor if she cooperates fully. What about custody? Emergency custody hearing is also December 27th. CPS will present their findings. Given the documented abuse and the parents' legal situations, I'm confident you'll be granted temporary custody. Long-term depends on how Sarah's case resolves and whether she can demonstrate she's a safe parent. And the money. The demand letter? That's on hold while the criminal cases proceed. But Rob, realistically, you're never seeing that $138,000 back. Derek's assets are frozen by the FBI. Sarah has nothing. You can get a judgment, but collecting on it is another matter. I don't care about the money anymore. I just want the kids safe. Then, you're getting what matters most. December 27th. Custody hearing. The family court was less formal than the restraining order hearing, but somehow more weighted. Judge Patricia Chen, a woman in her 50s with kind but firm eyes, reviewed the case file while we waited. Sarah sat at the petitioner's table with a public defender. She looked diminished, smaller than I remembered. Her expensive clothes were gone, replaced with a simple blouse and slacks. No makeup, hair pulled back. The performance was over. Our eyes met once across the courtroom. She looked away first, shame written across every feature. Judge Chen began. This is a custody modification hearing regarding Emma and Jack Thornton, currently in emergency placement with their maternal grandfather, Robert Mitchell. Ms. Thornton, you're here to show cause why this placement should not continue. Do you wish to make a statement? Sarah's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that she made serious errors in judgment. She removed the children from the state in violation of a protective order because she was in fear for her family's safety and financial security. She was not thinking clearly. Not thinking clearly is insufficient justification for custodial interference, Counselor. What evidence do you have that Miss Thornton is now capable of providing a safe home for these children? The lawyer fumbled. Miss Thornton she's enrolled in parenting classes. She's seeking therapy. She's committed to following all court orders going forward. Judge Chen looked unimpressed. Miss Thornton, I've read the CPS report. Your son had significant bruising consistent with being grabbed forcefully. Your daughter reported feeling afraid of her father's anger. You coached your 7-year-old to emotionally manipulate her grandfather. You fled an emergency protective order. Why should I believe you can provide a safe, stable home? Sarah stood slowly. Your Honor, may I speak directly? Go ahead. I've made terrible mistakes.
Not just errors in judgment. I made choices that hurt my children and my father. I married a man who turned out to be a fraud. I let him convince me that my father wasn't good enough for our family. I spent money we didn't have trying to be someone I wasn't. And when it all fell apart, I tried to run instead of facing consequences. Her voice broke. My father tried to protect my children from my ex-husband's anger, and I attacked him for it. He set boundaries and I weaponized my kids against him. I don't deserve custody right now, I know that, but I'm asking for the chance to earn it back. Judge Chen's expression softened slightly. Ms. Thornton, acknowledgement is a start. But your children need stability now, not promises of future improvement. I'm going to review the CPS recommendations. Linda Reeves took the stand and presented her findings. The bruises, Jack's coached responses, Emma's fear of her father, Sarah's flight from jurisdiction, Derek's fraud charges. Based on these findings, Linda concluded, CPS recommends that custody remain with Mr. Mitchell pending completion of Ms. Thornton's court-ordered therapy and parenting classes. We recommend supervised visitation with Ms. Thornton once weekly, with the possibility of increased contact if she demonstrates consistent progress. Judge Chen made notes. Mr. Mitchell, you've had the children for 4 days now. How are they adjusting? I stood. They're scared, Your Honor. They've been through trauma. But they're sleeping through the night for the first time in weeks. They're eating. They're starting to laugh again. They need stability and safety, and I can provide both. Are you prepared to be their primary guardian long-term if necessary? Yes, Your Honor, for as long as they need me. What about their relationship with their mother? I chose my words carefully. I want Emma and Jack to have a relationship with their mother, but only if that relationship is healthy and safe. Right now, Sarah needs to focus on her own healing.
When she's ready, I'll support supervised visits. Eventually, maybe more. But the children's safety comes first. Judge Chen nodded.
I'm granting temporary custody to Robert Mitchell for a period of 6 months subject to review. Ms. Thornton is granted supervised visitation, 1 2-hour session per week, supervised by a CPS caseworker.
She must complete parenting classes, undergo psychological evaluation, and demonstrate consistent compliance with all court orders. We'll review the arrangement in 6 months. Sarah's face crumpled, but she nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. As the courtroom cleared, Sarah approached me hesitantly. Dad, can we talk? Just for a minute. I glanced at Margaret, who nodded. 2 minutes. Out here in the hallway. In the corridor, Sarah kept a distance like she was afraid to get too close. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I know those words don't fix anything. I know I destroyed our relationship and hurt the kids and threw away everything you gave us. But I need you to know, I'm sorry. What are you sorry for, Sarah? Be specific. She flinched at the question. I'm sorry for everything. For Christmas. For the way Catherine and Miriam treated you. For not standing up to them. For using Emma to manipulate you. For lying in court. For choosing Derek's family over you. Her voice broke. For forgetting who you actually are. A good man who loved his grandchildren and only wanted to be part of their lives. Why did you do it? The truth, Sarah. Why did you exclude me? She wiped her eyes. Because I was ashamed of where I came from. Of having a father who laid tile and built things with his hands, while Derek's father quoted Latin and summered in the Hamptons. I thought if I could just be good enough, sophisticated enough, wealthy enough, then I'd finally be worthy of that world. But I wasn't. I was just a girl from Portland, pretending to be old money, funding it all with my father's generosity and my husband's fraud. Did you know about Derek's lies? Not at first, but over time, yeah.
I knew he didn't really have the MBA. I knew his clients were unhappy. I knew the money coming in didn't match the image he projected. I didn't want to admit I'd chosen wrong.
That I'd married a con artist who picked me for your bank account. The honesty was brutal and necessary. What happens now? I asked. I do the work. Therapy, parenting classes, whatever the court requires. I get a real job. I already applied at 3 nonprofits. I find an apartment I can actually afford. And I prove to you and the kids that I can be the mother they deserve, not the one I've been. And Derek is going to prison. The FBI has him on 8 counts of wire fraud. His lawyer says he's looking at 10 to 15 years minimum. She looked away. I filed for divorce yesterday. I should have done it years ago. Sarah, I need you to understand something. I love you. I'll always love you. You're my daughter, and that doesn't change. But I don't trust you. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. You're going to have to earn that back. I know. And if you ever use those kids as weapons again, if you coach them, manipulate them, or put them in the middle of adult problems, I will fight for full custody and you'll never get them back. Am I clear? Crystal clear. Good. Then we have a starting point. January 15th, 6 weeks later. Life developed a rhythm. Emma and Jack went back to Jefferson Elementary after winter break. Their teachers knew about the situation. I'd had a long conversation with both of them and were keeping an eye out for behavioral issues or signs of trauma. Every Wednesday at 4 p.m., Sarah came for her supervised visit. CPS caseworker Denise Rodriguez sat quietly in my living room while Sarah played board games with the kids, helped with homework, read stories. 2 hours that were simultaneously hopeful and heartbreaking. The first few visits were awkward. Emma clung to me, afraid I'd disappear if she let go. Jack barely spoke to Sarah, his trust shattered. But slowly, week by week, there was progress. Sarah showed up on time. She followed rules. She didn't make promises she couldn't keep. By the 3rd week, Emma hugged her mother goodbye. By the 6th week, Jack showed her a picture he'd drawn. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. The financial situation resolved itself in unexpected ways. The FBI seized Derek's remaining assets, about $12,000, as restitution for his fraud victims. The house went into foreclosure. Sarah's Mercedes was repossessed. Margaret Torres filed the civil suit for the $138,000 in loans, and in February we got a default judgment. Sarah didn't contest it. She had no money for lawyers and no defense. But as Margaret had predicted, collecting on it was impossible. Sarah was working part-time at a nonprofit making $32,000 a year, living in a studio apartment, barely making rent. "Do you want to garnish her wages?" Margaret asked. "No. Let her rebuild her life. The judgment stands, but I'm not going to take food out of her mouth. You're more generous than most people would be." "I'm not being generous. I'm being practical."
Taking 25% of $32,000 a year won't make me whole, and it'll keep her from ever getting stable enough to be a good mother to those kids. That doesn't help anyone. The trust fund got restructured exactly as I'd planned. Emma and Jack's college money, now grown to $131,000, was conditional on maintaining our relationship. I set up clear metrics with Margaret, weekly phone calls or visits, attendance at school events I was invited to, holidays together. If Sarah maintained those connections, the kids got their education fully funded. If she interfered, it went to charity. I hoped I'd never have to enforce that clause. March 3rd, Sarah's birthday. I hadn't celebrated Sarah's birthday in 3 years. She'd always been too busy, or I wasn't invited, or some excuse that boiled down to me not being welcome. This year, I bought a simple card and wrote inside, "Sarah, happy 38th birthday. I know this year has been harder than any before it. I know you're rebuilding from rubble, but I see you trying. I see you showing up for the kids even when it's hard. I see you doing the work. I'm proud of you for facing consequences instead of running. I'm proud of you for filing for divorce. I'm proud of you for getting honest about your mistakes. We have a long way to go. Trust isn't rebuilt in months. It takes years, but we're on the path. That's something. Love, Dad." I gave it to her at the Wednesday visit. She read it, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "Thank you." Emma looked up from her coloring book. "Mommy, why are you crying?" "Because Grandpa's a good man, and I forgot that for a while." April 12th, the school play. Emma had a speaking role in the second-grade play, 3 whole lines as a talking flower. She'd been practicing for weeks, performing her lines for me every night at dinner. "Grandpa, you have to come. You have to. I'll be in the front row." "What about Mommy?" I'd been dreading this question. "Do you want her there?" Emma thought about it seriously. "Yeah, but will it be weird?" "Probably, but we can handle weird if it means you have both of us there supporting you." I called Sarah that night. "Emma's play is next Thursday at 7 p.m. She wants you there. I think supervised visits have been going well enough that Denise can sit with us in the audience instead of monitoring privately, if you're interested." Silence. Then, "Really? You'd be okay with that?" "It's not about me. It's about Emma. She deserves to have her mother at her school play. I'll be there." "Thank you, Dad." Thursday night came. The Jefferson Elementary cafeteria had been transformed into a makeshift theater, parents crowding onto metal folding chairs. I saved 3 seats, 1 for me, 1 for Sarah, 1 for James, who'd driven down for the occasion. Sarah arrived 15 minutes early, nervous, wearing a simple dress I'd never seen before. Probably from a thrift store. She couldn't afford new clothes anymore. "Hi," she said awkwardly. "Hi. Thanks for coming." We sat in uncomfortable silence while the cafeteria filled. Finally, James arrived and broke the tension with forced cheerfulness about traffic and parking. The play started. It was exactly as charming and chaotic as second-grade plays always are. Kids forgetting lines, props falling over, parents filming with phones held too high. Then Emma appeared as the talking flower, and my heart swelled 3 sizes. She delivered her first line perfectly. "Spring is here at last." Her second line with a small stumble, but recovery. "We flowers dance in the warm sunshine." Her third line, she looked directly at where we sat, her face breaking into the biggest smile. "And family makes everything grow." That wasn't the scripted line. The script said, "And the rain makes everything grow." But Emma had improvised, and her teacher, bless her, had rolled with it. Beside me, Sarah started crying. Not quiet tears, but full sobs that she tried to muffle with her hand. I reached over and, after a moment's hesitation, squeezed her shoulder. "She's right, you know," I said quietly. "Family does make everything grow.
even when it has to be rebuilt from scratch. Sarah grabbed my hand and held on tight. We watched the rest of the play together, broken family in process of healing, sitting in a cafeteria that smelled like pizza and gym mats, while our granddaughter, daughter, beamed at us from the stage. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't what it used to be, but it was something, and something was better than nothing. May 20th, the 6-month review. Judge Chen reviewed the case file with the same careful attention she'd shown at the initial hearing. Mr. Mitchell, I have CPS's report showing the children are thriving in your care. Good grades, good behavior, seeing therapists who report consistent progress. Ms.
Thornton, I have reports showing you've completed parenting classes, attending weekly therapy, maintaining employment, and consistently showing up for all supervised visits.
Both caseworkers speak highly of your engagement. Sarah sat straighter in her chair. I'm extending temporary custody with Mr. Mitchell for another 6 months, but with modifications. Ms. Thornton, you're approved for unsupervised visits, 4 hours every Saturday, building to overnight visits, if the next 3 months continue to show progress. Sarah's face lit up. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me yet. You're still on probation for the custodial interference charge. 1 violation of court orders, 1 missed visit, 1 slip back into old patterns, and we're back to supervised only. Am I clear? Yes, Your Honor. Crystal clear. After the hearing, Sarah turned to me. Saturday visits. That's huge. It is. You've earned it. I won't mess this up, I swear. I believe you. But Sarah, let's be clear about something.
If you do mess up, if you're late, if you don't show up, if you put the kids in any situation that makes them feel unsafe, we're done. Not with visits, not with supervised contact. Done completely. This is your chance.
Don't waste it. I won't. June 10th, Derek's sentencing. I didn't attend, but Margaret called with the news. 12 years in federal prison, 8 counts of wire fraud, $480,000 in victim losses across 23 clients. The judge called him a calculating predator who exploited people's trust for personal gain. He'll be eligible for parole in 8 years if he demonstrates good behavior. How's Sarah handling it? I don't know, but it's final now. He's gone, and she can move forward without him. I thought about telling Emma and Jack that their father was going to prison, but their therapist suggested we wait. They're doing so well right now. They know he's gone. They know he hurt them. They don't need the details yet. When they're older and ask questions, answer honestly. But for now, let them heal. So we did. Father's Day, June 18th. Emma and Jack made me breakfast in bed. Burnt toast, runny eggs, orange juice with too much pulp. It was perfect. Happy Father's Day, Grandpa. Emma presented a card covered in glitter and drawings. Inside, in her careful 7-year-old handwriting, Dear Grandpa, thank you for taking care of us. You are the best dad and grandpa. I love you more than chocolate chips. Love. Emma. Jack's card was simpler. You're the best. Thanks for not leaving. Jack. Thanks for not leaving. 4 words that carried the weight of everything they'd been through. I'm never leaving, I said, pulling them both into a hug. Never. That afternoon, Sarah came for her Saturday visit. She brought a card, too, hesitant as she handed it over. Dad, I know I don't have the right to call this Father's Day since I've been such a terrible daughter, but I want you to know that watching you with Emma and Jack has taught me what real fatherhood looks like. Not money, not control, just showing up, being consistent, loving without conditions. You save my children, and maybe, if I work hard enough, you save me too. I love you. I'm sorry it took losing everything to remember that. Sarah. I read it twice, then looked at my daughter, thinner now, harder working, humbler than she'd been in years. Thank you, I said. For what? For doing the work. For showing up. For not giving up on yourself or the kids. I'm not there yet. No, but you're on the path. That's what matters. We spent Father's Day together. Me, Sarah, Emma, and Jack. Went to the park, got ice cream, threw a frisbee around. Simple things. Normal things. Things I'd thought I'd lost forever. As we walked back to my car, Emma between Sarah and me. She grabbed both our hands and swung between us like kids do. "This is nice," she said. "Having both of you." Sarah and I looked at each other over Emma's head. "Yeah," I said, "it is." And despite everything, the betrayal, the lies, the FBI raids and courtrooms and supervised visits, I meant it. We weren't fixed.
We probably never would be completely, but we were healing, and sometimes healing is the best you can hope for.
December 24th, 18 months later. The kitchen smelled like sage and rosemary, the same scents that used to fill Patricia's kitchen when she made her famous Christmas turkey. Emma stood on her step stool, now 8 years old and confident, helping me prepare the stuffing. "Grandpa, you're putting in too much sage. Your great-grandmother's recipe called for—" "I know, but last year it was too sagey. Trust me." I stepped back and let her adjust the seasoning. She was right, of course. Kids always know. Jack appeared in the doorway, now 11 and already showing signs of the teenager he'd become. "Mom's here." She brought pies. Through the kitchen window, I watched Sarah unload a car that was no longer a Mercedes, just a sensible Honda Civic she'd bought used 6 months ago when her nonprofit gave her a raise. She'd been promoted to program director, managing a team of 5 people, helping at-risk families navigate social services. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She came in carrying 3 pies, pumpkin, apple, and pecan, looking healthier than she had in years. Her hair was longer, her smile easier, the performance gone. "Merry Christmas Eve, Dad." "Merry Christmas Eve, sweetheart." I hugged her, no longer tentative, just normal. 3 pies. I got ambitious. Plus, I know how Jack feels about pecan pie. Jack grinned. "You're the best, Mom." We'd settled into this rhythm over 18 months. Joint custody, formally approved last spring after Sarah completed all her court requirements and demonstrated a year of consistent, healthy parenting. The kids spent weekdays with me since my house was closer to school. Weekends with Sarah at her 2-bedroom apartment in Selwood. Holidays we split or shared, depending on the year. This Christmas, Sarah had suggested we spend it together. "It's what the kids want," she'd said. "And honestly, it's what I want too, if you're comfortable with it." I was. 5:30 p.m., dinner preparation. James arrived with his wife, Linda, who I'd gotten to know well over the last year and a half. Margaret Torres came too. She'd become more than just my attorney. She was a friend, someone who'd stood by me during the darkest moments and helped rebuild something better from the wreckage. Rita and Robert Chen brought wine and stories about their own grandchildren. Claire Martinez from next door stopped by with her family. My living room filled with people who'd supported me, believed in me, stood witness to everything that had happened. And Sarah. My daughter moved through my kitchen with an ease she'd never had during the years when she was too ashamed of me to invite her friends over. Now she laughed with Margaret about a particularly difficult client, complimented Linda's sweater, asked Rita about her son's wedding. She belonged here. Finally. "Grandpa," Emma called from the living room. The timer went off. I checked the turkey. Perfect golden brown, just like Patricia used to make it. As I pulled it from the oven, I felt her presence. Not sad or haunting, just there, approving, proud that I'd held the family together, even when it tried to shatter. "Thanks, Patty," I whispered to the empty air. I think we did okay. 7:00 p.m., dinner. 12 people crowded around my dining room table, the one I'd expanded with 2 extra leaves to accommodate everyone. The same table where, 2 years ago, I'd eaten alone on Christmas, excluded from my family's celebration. Now it overflowed with food and conversation and laughter. Jack said grace, something Sarah had started teaching them, a return to the traditions we'd had when she was young. Simple words thanking whoever was listening for family, food, and second chances. "Amen," we said together. As we passed dishes and told stories, I watched the kids. Emma, animated and bright, telling Claire about her 3rd-grade teacher who was so cool because she let them have silent reading time every day. Jack, quieter but engaged, discussing some video game with James in that serious way. 11-year-old. Boys have. They were okay, more than okay. They were thriving.
Their therapist had told me last month that both kids had processed their trauma remarkably well, largely due to stable home environment and consistent caregiving. Translation: they felt safe, probably for the first time in years.
Sarah caught me watching them and smiled. They're good kids. They are. You're doing a great job with them. We're doing a great job, she corrected gently. I couldn't do this without you, Dad. The co-parenting, the support, the way you don't throw my mistakes in my face every time I pick them up. What would be the point? You've done the work. You've earned the trust back. Most of it, anyway. Most of it, I agreed. The rest will come. After dinner, while others cleared dishes, Sarah and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen. Dad, I need to tell you something. Derek's being released next week. I set down the plate I was rinsing. Released? I thought he had 8 more years. Time served plus good behavior. The federal system works differently. He'll be on supervised release for 5 years, but he's coming back to Oregon. How do you feel about that? Terrified, angry, worried he'll try to contact the kids. She dried a glass carefully, but also, and this sounds weird, grateful, because if Derek hadn't been exactly who he was, if everything hadn't collapsed the way it did, I'd still be living that lie. The kids would still be in that toxic environment. You and I wouldn't be standing here doing dishes together on Christmas Eve. That's a generous interpretation. It's a true one. Sometimes the worst things lead to the best things.
If you'd kept enabling us, if you'd just swallowed the Christmas exclusion and kept sending money, where would we be? I thought about it.
You'd be in that house drowning in debt you couldn't acknowledge, married to a man who hits your children, cutting me out of your lives to please his parents. Emma and Jack would be watching their parents' marriage disintegrate while pretending everything was perfect. Exactly. You saved us by saying no, by setting boundaries, by refusing to fund a fantasy that was destroying everyone. I was pretty angry at the time. You had every right to be. I'm still sorry, you know, for all of it. That doesn't go away. I know you are. But Sarah, you don't have to keep apologizing. You've shown me through your actions that you've changed. That's worth more than 1,000 apologies. She hugged me then, right there in the kitchen with soapy water dripping on the floor. I love you, Dad. Thank you for not giving up on me. I'm your father. That's not something I know how to do. 9 p.m. Presents. We gathered in the living room, the tree twinkling with lights Emma and Jack had helped me decorate 2 weeks ago. Presents stacked underneath, modest but thoughtful. Emma opened hers first. Art supplies because she'd discovered a love of painting. Jack got books about space exploration, his current obsession. Sarah gave me a framed photo of the 4 of us at Emma's school play, all of us smiling, broken family beginning to mend. I gave Sarah an envelope. She opened it cautiously. Inside was a check for $15,000 and a note. She read it aloud. Sarah, this is not a loan. It's a gift. I know you've been saving for a down payment on a house, and I want to help. Not because I'm enabling, but because you've earned the right to build something solid. You've done the work. Now build the life. Love, Dad. Tears streamed down her face. Dad, I can't. You can, and you will. Find a good house in a good neighborhood. Give those kids a stable home. That's all I want. This is too much. It's not nearly enough to make up for what I took back from the education fund when I was angry. Consider it balancing the scales. Actually, I'd never taken anything from the fund. It had grown to $147,000 and sat waiting for Emma and Jack's college years. But Sarah didn't need to know that. She needed to believe I was giving her a gift freely, not out of obligation. Emma tugged on my sleeve. Grandpa, we have something for you, too. She and Jack presented a poorly wrapped package. Inside was a photo album they'd made themselves. Pages and pages of pictures from the last 18 months. Making pancakes, playing at the park, Emma's school play, Jack's science fair project, Halloween costumes, Thanksgiving dinner, birthday parties. On the first page, in Emma's handwriting, our family. On the last page, a photo from tonight. All of us around the dinner table, captured by James on his phone, and written beneath it, thank you for keeping us together even when everything fell apart. I couldn't speak for a long moment. just held the album and looked at the faces of my grandchildren, my daughter, my friends. This improvised, reconstructed, hard-won family. Thank you, I managed finally. This is the best gift I've ever received. 11 p.m. After everyone left, Sarah was the last to leave, helping me clean up while the kids dozed on the couch, exhausted from excitement. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever regret it? The way you handled everything? The legal letters, the trust fund conditions, all of it? I thought about it while drying the last wine glass. No, I regret that it was necessary. I wish you'd never married Derek. I wish Catherine and Miriam had treated me with respect. I wish you'd stood up for me that Christmas instead of excluding me. But the way I responded once it all went wrong. No! I set boundaries, and those boundaries saved these kids. Saved you too, even if you didn't see it at the time. What if I'd never come around? What if I'd stayed angry and kept the kids from you forever? Then I would have lived with that grief. But I still wouldn't have kept funding a lie. Sarah, for 8 years I enabled you to live beyond your means, to stay married to a fraud, to prioritize image over integrity. The kindest thing I could do was stop. That's a hard kind of kindness. The best kind usually is. She gathered her purse, checked on the kids sleeping on the couch. I'll get them home. School's out all week, so we'll sleep in tomorrow. Actually, I said, why don't you three stay here tonight? It's late. The kids are already asleep. Guest rooms are made up. We can do Christmas morning together, then you can head home. Sarah's eyes widened. Really? You'd want that? I'd like that. If you would. I would. Thank you, Dad. After she went upstairs, I sat alone in my living room with the Christmas tree lights and the quiet. Patricia's photo smiled at me from the mantel. I raised my nearly empty wine glass to her. We made it, Patty. Broken and rebuilt, but we made it. Outside, snow began to fall. Rare for Portland, but perfect for Christmas. Through the window, I could see it accumulating on the street, covering everything in clean white. New beginnings. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Webb, who'd become a friend over the last year and a half. Marcus. Merry Christmas, Rob. Saw the news, Derek's being released. Want me to keep tabs on him? I thought about it, then typed back. Me. No. He's someone else's problem now. I've got everything I need right here. And I did. 2 sleeping grandchildren on my couch. My daughter upstairs in her old bedroom, finally at peace. A house full of warmth and food and the ghosts of laughter from tonight's gathering. Patricia and I had built something good. It had been broken by people who didn't value it, but it had been rebuilt by people who did. Stronger now, more intentional, held together by respect instead of obligation. I turned off the Christmas tree lights and headed upstairs to bed. Tomorrow was Christmas. Emma and Jack would wake up early, excited and loud. We'd make those chocolate chip pancakes with extra chips. We'd open more presents. We'd spend the day together, me, Sarah, and the kids, not pretending the past didn't happen, but not letting it define our future either. Family isn't what you're born into, it's what you build. And sometimes you have to tear down the broken version before you can build the one that lasts. I'd done that, we'd done that, and tomorrow, Christmas morning, we'd keep building. Epilogue. 1 year later. I'm writing this on Christmas Eve, 2026. 3 years since that first devastating exclusion. 2 years since the cabin confrontation. 1 year since Sarah spent Christmas Eve at my house. Emma is 9 now. Jack is 12. Sarah bought that house with my gift. A small 3-bedroom in southeast Portland, with a yard where the kids can play. She's been promoted again, now leading a division at her nonprofit. She's dating someone, a teacher named Michael, who treats her with kindness and respect and has absolutely no business scams in his background. I've met him twice. He seems genuine. Derek is living in Salem, working at a warehouse, forbidden from contacting the children. He hasn't tried. Maybe he learned something in federal prison, or maybe he just doesn't care. Either way, he's not our problem anymore. The civil judgment for $138,000 still exists on paper. Sarah makes small payments when she can, $50 here, $100 there. Last month she sent $200 with a note, slow and steady. I don't need the money, but I accept the payments because they're important to her. They're proof she's not the person who took without giving back.
The trust fund is at $156,000 now.
Emma and Jack will have their college education fully funded. They'll have opportunities Sarah and I never dreamed of. That was always the point. Judge Chen closed our case last spring. This is the outcome family court hopes for, she told us at the final hearing. Parents who do the work, grandparents who provide stability, and children who thrive despite trauma. Well done, all of you. Tonight, Christmas Eve 2026, all 12 of us are gathering again. Same people, same house, same traditions. Emma's making the stuffing. Jack's helping with the turkey. Sarah's bringing 4 pies this time. She got even more ambitious. And this year there's one new addition to the table. Michael, the teacher who asked my permission before coming. I know family dinners are sacred, he'd said. I don't want to intrude. You're not intruding, I told him. If Sarah trusts you enough to introduce you to the kids, you're welcome at this table. I've learned a lot in 3 years. About boundaries and consequences. About tough love and grace.
About when to hold firm and when to bend. About the difference between enabling and supporting. But most importantly, I learned this. Family isn't about unconditional acceptance of bad behavior. It's about unconditional love combined with conditional access. I'll always love Sarah. I'll always love Emma and Jack. But love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be used. It doesn't mean funding lies or tolerating disrespect or sacrificing your dignity for the sake of keeping peace. Real peace comes from respect, and respect comes from boundaries. If you're reading this because you're in a similar situation, being taken for granted by family, excluded while expected to keep giving, treated like an ATM instead of a person, hear me. Setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel. It makes you wise. Stopping the money doesn't make you vindictive. It makes you sane. And if your family can't respect your boundaries, if they weaponize their children against you, if they choose their pride over your dignity, that's information. Painful information, but valuable. It tells you who they actually are versus who you hoped they'd be. I'm 74 now. I've got Emma and Jack growing up in my house half the time, teaching me about TikTok and Roblox and whatever else kids are into these days. I've got my daughter back. Not the same as before, but maybe better because it's honest now. I've got friends who stood by me. I've got resources I didn't squander on people who didn't appreciate them. I've got my self-respect intact. That's worth more than $138,000. It's worth more than avoiding conflict or keeping false peace or maintaining a fantasy that everyone loves you. Patricia used to say, "Rob, you're too generous for your own good." She was right. But she also used to say, the best thing we can teach our children is how to stand up for themselves. I taught Sarah that lesson the hard way, through legal letters and court hearings and 18 months of supervised visits. But I taught it. And she learned it. And now she's teaching it to Emma and Jack. That love doesn't mean being a doormat. That family means mutual respect. That you can forgive without forgetting, rebuild without erasing, move forward without pretending the past didn't hurt. Tomorrow morning, Emma and Jack will wake up early. We'll make chocolate chip pancakes with too many chips. We'll open presents. We'll spend Christmas together. Imperfect, reconstructed, hard-won family. And it will be enough. More than enough. It will be everything.